So please, if you could take your seats so we can get today's important event underway. I'll just give people a couple of seconds. We have several hundred people joining online as well, which I would like to acknowledge before we get started. Okay, I think we're good to go. We're going to get the event started. A warm global summit on gender equality in national representatives and ambassadors, the UN Commissioner for Refugees, UN agencies, intergovernmental organizations, civil society speakers, and the sponsors of today's event, the Global Campaign for Equal Nationality Rights, UNHCR, UNICEF, and UN Women. My name is Yvonne Dege, and I'll be your host and moderator during today's important event. The purpose of today's gathering is to address the fact that despite progress in combating gender discrimination in nationality laws, today there are still 24 countries that have nationality laws that deny women the right to pass their citizenship to their children on an equal basis with men. There are almost 50 countries that do not grant women equal rights to pass citizenship to their non-citizen spouse, or the equal rights to acquire, change, or retain their nationality. The discrimination is causing wide-ranging human rights violations for millions of women and girls and men and boys around the world, including a lack of access to education and healthcare, statelessness, links with gender-based violence, the inability to access formal employment, and discrimination in the workplace are also factors. And countries losing out on the full contributions of their citizens, families, to advance towards the SDGs. Today's global event is a rallying cry to encourage countries with such gender discriminatory nationality laws to enact nationality reforms to enshrine gender equality, to encourage concrete pledges focused on advancing gender equal nationality rights in advance, in advance of the second Global Refugee Forum to be held in December this year, and to enhance member states and other stakeholder support for the Secretary General's call to action for human rights and our common agenda, including to repeal all gender discriminatory laws and to end statelessness. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we will hear from the women at the center of this ongoing injustice and other affected persons who have been leading efforts to achieve gender equality nationality laws in their various countries. We will also hear from government leaders and UN representatives about the importance of this issue and, critically, the work and action that is being undertaken to end gender discrimination in nationality laws. We have seen important progress to end gender discrimination in nationality laws, and we will take stock of this progress during today's event. But the key objective is to consider the work that still remains to be done to ensure that every citizen has the right to acquire, change, and retain their nationality, and to confer nationality on their child and spouse without any discrimination on the basis of their gender. This is an especially opportune moment for this summit as we celebrate 75 years of the anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The rights enshrined in the Declaration 75 years ago require the achievement of gender equality in nationality laws. Before we get started with today's event, here are some housekeeping details. This event is in person and it's also online. As I said, we have over 500 or 600 participants joining us remotely. I'd like to welcome all those attendees. Interpretation is also available in Arabic, English, and in French. There is the capacity to share channels for the use of each language at the tables. If you have any challenges with translation, please just raise your hand. We welcome contributions to the online conversation on social media for those who like to tweet. On social media, please use the hashtag #EqualCitizenship. Please also silence your mobile phones. And last but not least, a reception where we can interact and engage and network more will follow the event, which will close at around 6:30 this evening. The reception will take place directly outside of this room, so you don't have far to go. I would like to now, and it gives me immense honor to invite and introduce our first speaker to the podium, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Mr. Filippo Grandi. UNHCR has been engaged in a multi-year campaign to end statelessness. Ensuring gender equality in nationality laws is essential to this effort. Can we give a warm welcome to the UN High Commissioner? High Commissioner, if you could come to the podium. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yvonne, and good afternoon, everybody. It's really a great pleasure to be here, and thank you for giving me the honor to be the first speaker, or the second speaker, rather, I should say. I am truly delighted that UNHCR is co-sponsoring this global summit on gender equality in nationality laws, along with the global campaign on equal nationality rights, UNICEF and UN Women. At the core of the Universal Declaration on Human Rights is the basic premise that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Equality is the bedrock principle on which our entire system of human rights is based, and on which the very health and functioning of our societies depend. This legal and moral imperative to treat everyone equally also extends, it must extend, to nationality rights. Eleanor Roosevelt, the chairperson, as you know, of the United Nations Drafting Committee of the Universal Declaration, referred to the right of nationality as a right of vital importance. She was right. It is fundamental to one's identity and to the enjoyment of other human rights. Yet, this right to nationality is, as we just heard from Yvonne, is denied to millions around the world, leaving them at risk of being marginalized and vulnerable, without access to basic services or the ability to seize opportunities to build a decent life for themselves. Inequality between men and women in nationality laws is a major cause of statelessness. And this is why UNHCR has a big stake in this discussion, because statelessness, as you know, is an issue that actually UNHCR has been mandated to resolve. This has profound impacts on the lives of women, men, girls, and boys, as Yvonne said very clearly, around the world today. Women's inability to equally confer citizenship can put huge financial, emotional, and practical strains on families, as you know very well. Its impacts are also often passed down from generation to generation. Discriminatory nationality laws can threaten family unity, and in some cases, increase the potential for family violence. And even, if I may go to the other part of our own work, forced displacement. To better understand the human suffering behind this discrimination, here are some real-life examples of the impact of gender discrimination in nationality laws. For example, and these are real examples, a 70-year-old widow who is still working 3 cleaning jobs to support her adult children. As she was not able to confer nationalities, her children are stateless and unable to find employment. A 10-year-old boy picking rubbish at a dump because without a father or access to his mother's nationality, he lacks the documentation, for example, to go to school. A 46-year-old divorced woman fighting a losing battle against her abusive husband in order to see her 3 children who live with him in another country because they only have his nationality, not hers. And there's many, as you know, many stories like that all over the world. I'm really grateful that you have invited Habiba, Gaitiri, and Neha today, who will tell us how their lives and the lives of their children and families have been impacted by gender discriminatory laws. I admire the courage, tenacity, and resolve that have brought you here today and that animates so many other activists and practitioners around the world. We don't take it lightly that you have chosen to share your personal experiences and your demands with us. Now, in 2014, as you know, UNHCR launched an ambitious campaign, the I Belong campaign. This was launched by my predecessor, who, as you know, the Secretary General today. This I Belong campaign was a campaign to end statelessness, and the span was 10 years. So it will be over. The campaign will be over, but the fight is not over at the end of next year. Critical to achieving the goal of ending statelessness is the universal reform of nationality laws that discriminate against women. This goal reflects the objectives of Article 9 of the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, which explicitly calls on its state parties to ensure that women have the same rights as men when it comes to their ability to confer nationality to their children and spouses. But gender inequality in nationality laws is not only about women's rights. It is also about children's rights. In fact, the Convention on the Rights of the Child, ratified by almost every country in the world, stipulates that, and I quote, every child has the right to acquire a nationality, unquote. Complying with this obligation requires that states reform nationality laws that prevent mothers from passing their nationality to their children. This is why I'm heartened that the global campaign on equal nationality rights, UNICEF and UN Women are standing with us shoulder to shoulder, as ending gender discrimination in nationality laws requires our collective and undivided attention and action. for upholding equality makes our societies better, stronger, and more inclusive. When women can confer their nationality equally with men, their children are more likely to receive an education, healthcare, access to the formal labor market once they grow up. Ending gender discrimination in nationality laws brings us all closer also towards realizing the Sustainable Development Goals, in particular the goals relating to gender equality, Goal 5, Goal 10 on reducing inequalities, and Goal 16 on peace and justice. I'm convinced that by working together, we can overcome this remnant of enduring gender inequality. We have seen inspiring progress over the years in eliminating this particular form of discrimination, showing us all that where there is political will, it can be done. Today, we will hear from 3 countries, Indonesia, Liberia, and Morocco, which exemplify how such reforms can come to fruition. They remind us that reform is possible in any part of the world, regardless of differences in language, culture, or religion. I welcome Minister Saydee-Tarr, who will speak to us today about Liberia's journey. From the pledge it made at the 2019 Global Refugee Forum to remove gender discrimination in its nationality laws, I remember very well, and I discussed it when I was in Liberia last year, to the constitutional reform it achieved in this area. I'm thrilled that today we will also hear from states that are on their journey towards reform. Minister Buthelezi from Eswatini, Major General Al-Hafaji from Iraq, and Secretary Namakin from Kiribati. Thank you for coming to share news about the progress your respective countries are making. And please be assured of UNHCR's support for efforts in each of your countries, as well as in other countries. Across the world, civil society and increasingly organizations led by those affected by gender discrimination in nationality laws are indispensable advocates and partners in our collective efforts to achieve universal equality. A number of them have traveled to attend this global summit today. Thank you for being here. This year, we also celebrate the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We are, as I said, in the final 2 years of the I Belong campaign, and we're entering the final stretch to achieve the SDGs by 2030. So now is the time for us all to take action, including by helping the remaining countries achieve gender equality in their nationality laws. I propose 5 key actions for governments to take. First, all states that are yet to do so should accede to the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, and, may I say, to the 1954 and 1961 Statelessness Conventions. These accessions are not just abstract diplomatic gestures. They provide solid legal basis for national reforms to ensure gender equality in nationality laws and to prevent and reduce statelessness and to protect stateless people. Second, states that are already party to that convention should remove any reservations that they have against Article 9. This would be in keeping with the object and purpose of that treaty and facilitate the reform of gender discriminatory nationality laws. Third, States which still have this aspect of gender discrimination in their laws should consider making a pledge to reform those laws at the Global Refugee Forum in December this year. Now, the Global Refugee Forum is about refugees, asylum, responsibility, and burden sharing in refugee matters. But of course, given also the close link between statelessness and displacement, very often it is relevant that these pledges also take place, as was the case in 2019. 4, states that have already pledged or committed in any form to reform their laws should develop a time-bound implementation plan to reform these laws and then implement them. And finally, states that have had the experience and seen the benefits of introducing gender equal nationality laws should support, through dialogue and sharing of their own positive practices, with those that are yet to achieve these reforms. Change requires action not only from states. We need the continued leadership shown by regional organizations and by parliamentarians. I ask them to continue acting as bridges among states, together with civil society, and as facilitators that reconcile diverse positions towards ensuring this aspect of the respect of gender equality. And we will require greater support from the whole UN system. I ask my UN colleagues here to help us achieve that, as well as NGOs, of course, and others working in this field, in civil society and elsewhere. To support such a collaborative way of working, UNHCR is currently leading an effort to establish a new multi-stakeholder global alliance to end statelessness. This is important. We will launch this initiative, this global alliance, in 2024 at the end of the I Belong campaign to carry it forward and build on it. This initiative will expand the level of engagement of global, regional, and national stakeholders, including states and stateless-led organizations. As part of this, we will work even more closely with those countries that have unequal nationality laws to help them achieve the reforms that are needed. Like statelessness, the problem of gender discrimination in nationality laws has a cure that is within our grasp. Collectively, let us rise to this challenge, do what it takes to achieve universal equality between women and men in nationality matters, and consign this form of discrimination once and for all to the history books. Many thanks.
Thank you, High Commissioner, for those thought-provoking words and the direct call to action and all that UNHCR is doing. I want to now move on with the program to introduce our next speaker. High Commissioner Grandi referred to Liberia, and we want to acknowledge and celebrate Liberia today as the country that has most recently removed all gender discriminatory provisions in its nationality laws. I think we should clap for that. It's wonderful. The country's nationality laws now upholds gender equality, and we are about to hear about the motivations for this important reform. And on that note, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce the Honorable Williametta Saydee-Tarr, who is the Minister of Gender, children, and social protection for Liberia. Honorable Minister, if you could come up to the front and if we could give her a clap as she comes up. Thank you. Yep, come on up. Thank you so much. Thank you. Nice to meet you. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Yes. Mr. Filippo Grandi, UN High Commissioner for Refugees, members of the Women's Refugee Commission, members of the Global Campaign for Equal Nationality Rights, representatives of the United Nations present, permanent representatives of member states, representatives of governments here present, co-speakers, members of the donor community, human rights organizations, all of civil society organizations, and leaders here present, and of course, our religious leaders, members of the Fourth Estate, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I bring you greetings from His Excellency Dr. George Manawia, our own feminist-in-chief, under whose authority I'm here in my capacity as Minister of Gender, Children, and Social Protection of Liberia to speak to you about our own progress as regards the topic at hand. I'm deeply honored by this invitation extended to me by the Global Campaign for Equal Nationality Rights and the Women's Refugee Commission in collaboration with UNHCR, UNICEF, and UN Women to share Liberia's notable reform, which now confers to women the same rights as men to confer nationality to children and spouses. I would like to highlight that it was not an easy ride. It was not an easy ride to make these reforms on our nationality law. I want to acknowledge that we have to appreciate the president that we have today. Like I said, he's our feminist-in-chief, and he's actually a self-named feminist-in-chief, and that means a lot. That means just with that name, he's made the commitment. And he signed this law on July 22nd of 2022. The law, which is titled an act to amend and or nullify certain provisions of the Aliens and Nationality Law relating to citizenship and restoring the citizenship rights lost as a consequence of those provisions, commonly referred to as the Aliens and Nationalities Law, has now legally removed the gender discrimination in Liberia's nationality law. Because of the president's own political will and drive for achieving gender equality as a he for she champion, we were able to remove this archaic stereotype against women relative to conferring nationality on their children born outside of the Republic of Liberia. In this forum, I would also like to extend sincere appreciation to our own legislature with whom he had to lobby and all of us had to lobby for the passage of the law. This is important because if you know Liberia, we have 103 legislators. Of those 103, we only have 11 women right now. So these men in there had to be he for she's to also know that they had to give strength to the laws and to ensure that we strike out the discriminative part of it. Well, I would also like to appreciate United Nations and other partners for their enormous support to Liberia over the years as we aspire to achieve gender equality and uphold children's rights and well-being within the context of sustainable development and to end statelessness. Prior to the passage of the law by our legislature and the subsequent signing into law by the president, several provisions, including Part 3, Chapter 20, 21, and 22 of Title 4 of the Liberian Code of Laws Revised, also known as the 1973 Aliens Nationality Law. It showed that the laws clearly violated the rights of Liberian women and children. The law discriminated Liberian citizenship rights between a person born of Liberian parents, be it the father or the mother, on Liberian soil on the one hand, and a person born of Liberian parents outside of Liberia on the other hand. For instance, Chapter 20, Section 20.1b provided that for a person to become a citizen of Liberia at birth, consideration was only given to a person born outside of Liberia whose father, one, was born a citizen of Liberia, two, was a citizen of Liberia at the time of birth of such child, and three, had resided in Liberia prior to the birth of such child. This provision in the previous law did not provide for a person born outside of Liberia to obtain citizenship through his or her mother. This was extremely discriminatory. Indeed, the provisions contained in the 1997 Aliens and Nationality Law were all in violation of the 1986 Constitution of the Liberian Republic, particularly the Equal Protection Clause. I would like to make a few specific references to the Constitution of the Republic of Liberia. Article 11B and C provide that all persons, irrespective of sex, are entitled to the fundamental rights and freedoms, and that all persons are equal before the law and are therefore entitled to the equal protection of the law. 2, Article 28 also provides that any person, at least one of whose parents was a citizen of Liberia at the time of the person's birth, shall be a citizen of Liberia. Legal scholars would argue that the 1973 Alien and Nationality Law was in flagrant violation of human rights and that it discriminated against females especially, thereby undermining the achievement of gender equality within the context of the Sustainable Development Goals. Is this true? Yes, it is. Many Liberians believe so. You all would agree with me that this old law did not uphold women and men's equal rights to confer nationality on children and their spouses and provide far-reaching negative consequences on all aspects of family life, subjecting children, women, and foreign spouses to restriction in movements, restriction in job opportunities, restriction in educational opportunities, restriction or limited access to finance, including opening bank accounts, restriction in owning or inheriting properties. All of these, coupled with the huge burden on women's inability to confer citizenship, has placed huge financial, psychological, and physical constraints on families, leading to intergenerational poverty, getting poorer and poorer by the day. It is about time that we all rally with nations around the world to make reforms that will once and for all end legal discrimination against women. Has Liberia made progress in this regard? Yes, we have. But we also do understand that there is more that needs to be done generally, and this includes all of us in the global village. What affects one affects all. Prior to reaching a point of removing and ending gender discrimination in our nationality law, there are many hurdles and setbacks. As recently as 2008, during the former regime, a bill that sought to address citizenship and nationality failed. Again, in 2015, under the previous government, the Constitutional Review Committee did not succeed in making reforms to citizenship and nationality. Under the leadership of His Excellency Dr. George Manawia, we have been able to address gender discrimination in our nationality law with an unwavering focus and commitment towards achieving gender equality, eradicating the risks of statelessness, and the realization of the Sustainable Development Goals. The process required engagement with all stakeholders, including the legislature, to ensure that the bill was actually placed on the floor, because that was where it needed to start for deliberations, sent to committee room for review, and for final passage by the legislature. This was also a process that included civil society organizations, and of course, our religious community was very strong in its own advocacy to increase and beef up the awareness. To make amendments to the law is not an event, but a process. We would like to encourage other countries to emanate the good lessons learned from Liberia and other countries, including Kenya, Senegal, Sierra Leone, and Benin in Africa, just to name a few, and their approach to nationality laws reform to make a necessary radical change in their nationality laws. With determination and zeal and togetherness, we all can end statelessness and promote gender equality, even in our nationality laws globally. We do not want to live in a world where a child cannot be registered at birth. We do not want to live in a world where a child does not have the right to nationality and cannot obtain something as simple as a passport and not be able to travel freely. We do not want to live in a world where a male and a female, as a parent of a child, cannot confer citizenship equally on that child through birth or naturalization. We do not want to live in a world where families are separated forcibly due to no proof of nationality or cannot fulfill onerous documentation. We do not want to live in a world where there are numerous stateless women and girls and boys. We do not want to live in a world where women and girls are at risk or are exposed to violence due to their statelessness. The narrative should change, and now is the time. We want to live in a world where all children are registered at birth, where every child has a right to nationality and can obtain a passport and travel freely without hindrances. We want to live in a world where a male and a female, as a parent to a child, can confer citizenship equally on that child through birth or naturalization, devoid of gender discrimination. Where families are held together tightly, where there are no risks of separation, and families can care for their children and have access to essential social services. We want to live in a world where there will be no statelessness for women, girls, or boys, or even men in general. We want to live in a world where women and girls will be protected and not be at risk of any form of violence due to statelessness. Finally, I would like to emphasize that as a country, Liberia will continue to strive to uphold the tenets and principles of human rights treaties and agreements, all geared towards achieving gender equality. We remain committed to ensuring equal nationality rights for women and men to acquire, change, retain, and transmit their nationality within the context of the recommendations of the Human Rights Council's Universal Periodic Review, as well as the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women and the UNHCR's #IBelong campaign to end statelessness by 2024. We would like to thank the United Nations, particularly UNHCR, UNICEF, and UN Women for their own immense support in achieving gender equality. To this end, we encourage all other countries to make reforms in their own nationality laws to address the gender discrimination therein, as contained in Article 9, Section 2 of CEDAW, that requires states parties to grant women equal rights with men and respect to the nationality of their children. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to the Honorable Minister, and thank you for all that has changed and has been done in Liberia, which really stands as a very fine example and shows it truly is possible. We want to keep moving with the program. I think everybody has a copy of the program, and we now want to go into our panel discussion, conversation with a group of individuals who can talk more closely about the real impact of gender discrimination in nationality laws and how this discrimination intersects with current global issues and goals, and to discuss in more detail some recent developments in each of the countries that those who are going to be on this panel, those representing organizations, can speak to. So I want to ask the panelists to come up to the front. I believe you know who you are. If you come up to the front and maybe take your seat, thank you. And then I will introduce you to today's in-person and online audience. Then we will get the conversation underway. Don't forget there's translation. Also importantly, I've been asked to point out the very important mugs on the table. Don't forget your mug. So when you're having your morning coffee, you remember that the fight is still very much on to change some of these discriminatory laws and practices in some of the countries we're going to be discussing today. I think the panelists are assembled and being seated. So I'm going to now introduce our panelists, starting from my right to my left. Habiba Al-Hinai. Thank you, Habiba. Joins us, an affected activist and working within the Omani Association for Human Rights, and I believe traveling here today for this special event to speak about Oman and the end. I'd also like to introduce, Gaitheri Siva. Gaitheri, thank you very much for being here from Malaysia, who is part of the organization known as Impacted Mothers Network, Family Frontiers. I would also like to introduce Adriana. I'm going to try this. Quinones. Thank you very much. UN Women Head of Human Rights and Development here in Geneva. You don't have to travel far today. I would also like to introduce, okay, there isn't gender balance on this panel. You're all alone, Mark. Mark Rubin, who is the UNICEF Deputy Regional Director for the Middle East and North Africa. And then last but not least, Catherine Harrington, the Global Campaign for Equality, Equal Nationality Rights Campaign Manager. Catherine Harrington, Global Campaign for Equal Nationality Rights Campaign Manager, who I believe has traveled from New York. So a round of applause for our panelists. And I'm going to take my seat here. Good. The mic is still working. I'm going to come and join the panelists at the end of this table, and we're going to start our conversation. Very lucky, Habiba. I'm sitting right next to you. I'm just going to position the mic so everyone can hear me clearly. Can you still hear me okay? I feel like it needs to be slightly closer. Okay, great. So thank you very much. We have some time for a conversation. So I want to start with yourself, Habiba Al-Hinai, from the Omani Association of Human Rights. You've been a leading voice calling for nationality laws to uphold equal rights for women and men. Can you share with us how you came to be involved in this kind of work? What happened to you? I'm just going to move the microphone for you.
Thank you, Yvonne. I'm the lucky one sitting next to a celebrity. Warm welcome, warm greetings to our panelists and audience. Your Excellency, UN Commissioner, thank you very much for being here. I also would like to thank the Global Campaign for Equal Nationality Rights, especially Kathleen and her team, and UN, UNICEF, and UNHCR, and UN Women for supporting us. Thank you for your support of our ongoing struggle. In 1996, I made an awkward decision to some things in my community, and that is to marry an Omani man who is German. And that decision changed my entire life. I married in my home country of Oman after obtaining approval from my government, which was required to marry a foreigner. I believe that by respecting the Omani law would make my
كنت
life
أعتقد
and my
أن
marriage
باحترام القوانين
more safe,
العمانية
stable, and
هذا
secure.
الأمر سيجعل حياتي
In
يعني أكثر
1998, I was
أمنا.
overwhelmed
في
with
سنة
joy to welcome my only child into the world and to raise him in my
98 كنت
country which
سعيدة
I loved.
جدا لأن
My first shock came shortly after the birth of my son prematurely, who had to stay in an incubator in a government hospital, and we have free healthcare in Oman. And for a couple of weeks he was in an incubator. After that I was handed in a large sum of bill that I had to pay, and asked why. They said because he's a foreigner. But I said, when I walked in here, I was an Omani who took care of me. But they said, well, after he left your womb, he's a foreigner and you have to pay the bill. Of course, after that, many shocks bombarded my family, my small family, and in my life. I could not issue a resident permit for my son. I could not open a bank account. I could not simply travel without permission of the father. I could not even register his name without the father. And the most important thing, he could not inherit anything from me until today. And I could not, of course, pass my nationality to him. So, and I was shocked, of course, that in fact, my son also, he could not enjoy a higher university, and he was the first in his school. And by the age of 18, he had to leave the country because he's a foreigner. So I would say, worst of all, this also meant that my son, like all affected children, would have no right to remain in the country of his birth. Upon turning 18, he would be required to obtain residency sponsorship from a university or private business, or leave the only country that he called home. Of course, this sponsorship means the mother has to pay lots of money to renew, whether I have to register him as my driver or my maid or whoever, you know. I thought if people just knew about the suffering caused by this unjust law, perhaps we could change it. So I began talking about how the law was hurting my family in local forums. I don't know. In 2007, I interviewed more than 300 women, and I realized that there are more women who are suffering than myself and my son. When he turned 18, I thought, if he cannot have all this, why should I call Oman my home? So I left with him, and now, since 2016, I live in Germany in exile. Families continue to suffer every day because women are denied equal nationality rights. Women are penalized for choosing to marry non-citizens, which infringes on their right to freely choose a spouse. Some children raised in their mother's country are unable to be cared for their father, who are forced to work abroad without a pathway to citizenship in their wife's country, which is granted to the spouse of men. The cases of family separation caused by gender discrimination in nationality laws only increased during the pandemic, when travel bans prevented women's non-citizen children and spouses from entering countries to be united with their families. As incidents of gender-based violence tragically increased during the pandemic, women who sought to leave abusive relationships faced even greater barriers when their or their children's nationality was depending upon the abuser. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Habiba, for sharing your very personal story and bringing to today's audience, those here and those online, the real impact of this discriminatory situation that you've described. Gaithiri Siva, I want to bring you into the conversation. Gaithiri is from Impacted Mothers Network, Family Frontiers in Malaysia. You've also been leading reform efforts with other affected mothers, calling for reforms to uphold women's rights to confer nationality on an equal basis with men in your country. Can you share how you came to be involved in this work and what your involvement has looked like?
Selamat sejahtera and good day, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. I am an impacted mother. I was actually working overseas. So I was sent to work in the US in 2013 by a Malaysian government-linked investment company. And it was supposed to be a short stint, but it turned into something a lot longer than initially was expected. I met my now spouse there, and my child was born there. And I had applied for my child's citizenship in Malaysia because I traveled a lot to Malaysia at that time because of work, because of family. And I was told it would take 2 years to obtain her citizenship. And I said, okay, that's fine. I submitted all the papers and was waiting. All the while still working in the US and traveling back to Malaysia on and off. The borders were closed during the pandemic. I got a call from home in July 2020 that my dad had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. When I tried to travel back from the US, my then 3-year-old's application to travel with me was rejected on the basis that she was not Malaysian. For me, never in my worst nightmares did I think that I would be caught in a situation where I had to choose between my dad and my daughter. It was the height of the pandemic and the grave news that my dad was dying. I was dealt with an additional blow of not being able to return with my child, all because my daughter was not a citizen. I applied at least 5 times and was either denied or there was silence. I finally shared my story with a newspaper in Malaysia and received approval very soon after to travel back with my child and my spouse, and was able to spend some time with my dad before he passed away last year. I'm still in Malaysia, I live there. So I come into this work for very personal reasons, obviously, and it continues to be personal because my child is still not been granted citizenship. It is also very personal because I was working for a Malaysian company at that time. And now we're back in Malaysia and trying to make it our home, but it is very difficult because my child is denied basic equal rights when it comes to education and healthcare in public schools and hospitals. She had an accident. She ran into a glass pane and cut her head, and we had to rush her to the nearest emergency, which was a public hospital. She was fine, but when it came to paying the bill, it was double. I saw citizens, non-citizens, and they made me pay double for my child at that time. So the cost of healthcare, while it's accessible, is much higher for a non-citizen. I cannot fully describe how it feels to have your country reject your child. I don't have the words for that, honestly. The broader awareness for me about the issue came from my engagement and involvement with Family Frontiers, an NGO in Malaysia that campaigns for the abolition of gender discriminatory laws. They are backed by a network of mothers who are affected by these laws, just like me. And one key aspect of the campaign that has significantly changed me is the focus on empowering affected mothers to get involved in advocacy efforts, as well as capacity building to rise up and speak about our story, to share our stories. And it is why I'm here today. Choosing to do this advocacy is also realization of how pervasive gender discriminatory laws are to the autonomy of women and our ability to make decisions for ourselves and for the well-being of our children. Within our network, there are women who are choosing to stay in abusive relationships in fear of losing their child. Women are choosing to risk their lives to get on a plane late in pregnancy, to go home to give birth. Women are choosing to domicile in countries without any support system, all because of these laws. That we are faced with these dilemmas and choices, especially when it involves risking our lives to ensure our child is Malaysian, a dilemma and choice no Malaysian man has to make, makes this incredibly hard to tolerate and accept. What does our work look like? There is a lot of public awareness work. Our intent is to create and deepen awareness on our issue. During the height of the pandemic, when we weren't able to meet in person, we used social media as a tool to share our stories and impact of the gender disparity in our lives. I'm personally on Twitter, and there are mothers on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, constantly sharing our stories. Last year, we had events and gatherings and campaigns in person. One that was really emotional for me was a prayer event in a park for a mother from our network who had suddenly passed away, halting the ability for her child, who is now an adult, from gaining citizenship. The event was tender and beautiful, and it was to honor her fight for her daughter, whom as we speak is now an adult in Malaysia, and without her mom has no way of obtaining citizenship with the existing laws. Through my advocacy work too, I came to know a fierce and brilliant journalist in Malaysia. She's an adult child of a Malaysian mom and has lived in Malaysia since she was 10 years old. Heartbreakingly, her mom passed away recently due to COVID, which has also halted her bid to citizenship through her mom. We speak to the media, we speak on panels, we meet with members of parliament and push for their support by highlighting the impact on our children. We have marched, I have marched in peaceful protests. And so ultimately it's a collective effort. As a recent event I attended recently organized by Family Frontiers, we heard some really hopeful statistics. There was a poll conducted by Family Frontiers that interviewed people from various walks of life to find that 82% of those interviewed supported our call for gender equality in citizenship laws in Malaysia. I believe the government has heard us and has seen the impact of this unjust law on Malaysian women and our children. In February of this year, the cabinet announced their decision to proceed with amending the constitution to grant equal rights to women, which is a welcomed decision and long overdue. I cried when I heard it, almost in disbelief. And there is a lot more to say, and there is still a long ways to go, but it is a step in the right direction.
Wow, thank you, Gaithiri, for sharing your story and for the enormous personal sacrifice you've probably had to make in leading efforts to change the situation facing people in Malaysia. So thank you very much for your story and your thoughts. Thank you. I want to turn to our colleague Adriana Quinones, who is UN Women Head of Human Rights and Development here in Geneva. Thank you, Adriana, for being here. We know that gender discrimination in nationality laws is first and foremost a gender equality issue. But given the wide breadth of issues affecting women and girls today, why is this a priority area of work for UN Women? And what kind of work is UN Women doing in relation to this? Over to you.
First of all, thank you to the organizers for this important event. I think it is time to discuss discriminatory legislation, in particular nationality laws. As UN Women, we work with the CEDAW committee, with the Working Group on Non-Discrimination Against Women and Girls, with the special rapporteurs, with all the treaty bodies. But let me share with you that more than 2.5 billion women and girls around the world are affected in multiple ways by discriminatory laws and the lack of legal protection. But equality in law is crucial to gender equality, as women and girls look to the laws and to the state to protect, fulfill their rights, and enforce their rights. So let's not forget that when we have laws that discriminate and deny women of equal rights with men, they betray their trust in society and signal that gender discrimination is acceptable, normal, and expected. Abolishing discriminatory laws is one of the targets of Goal 5 of the SDGs, as you all know. But more than that is the feeling of women that they are left behind, that they are often permanently excluded from the benefits of development, as we have just heard. And therefore, ending discrimination against women is essential to building prosperous and peaceful societies. Nationality laws, or the equal ability to confer citizenship, are paramount to women's status as citizens and as members of their own families. When a state allows gender discrimination in its nationality laws, it's implicitly endorsing the notion that women are inferior or possessing second-class citizenship. This is a priority area of UN Women because nationality rights are the first step to a whole host of other fundamental rights, not only for women, but also for their spouses and their children. Unequal rights can, for example, limit women's access to essential services, place restrictions on mobility and employment, and affect decisions regarding where they live related to their sexual and reproductive health and autonomy. The inability to pass on citizenship to children and spouses, therefore, puts huge financial, psychological, physical strains on families, which can result in an intergenerational spiral of poverty, destitution, and disempowerment. While states have the sovereign right to determine the parameters of states of access to citizenship, international law obliges them not to discriminate on the basis of sex or other protected grounds. This foundation is based on Article 9 of the CEDAW Convention, and state parties, where it says state parties shall grant women of equal rights with men to acquire, change, or retain their nationality, as well as the Human Rights Council resolution, resolution 20/4, that urges states to reform nationality laws that discriminate against women by granting equal rights to men and women, and to confer nationality to their children regarding the acquisition, change, or retention of their nationality. Eliminating gender discrimination in nationality laws could have profound impacts on hundreds and thousands of lives through, for example, improved access to education, healthcare, identity documents, employment, and inheritance. Though there has been progress on ending legal discrimination, this is an essential area that needs attention and action. It is a first step that can lead to many more positive developments, not only for women, but for the whole of society, and moves us closer to achieving our goals of gender equality and empowerment for women and girls.
Thank you. Thank you, Adriana. Thank you for telling us why UN Women is involved in this and what UN Women is doing. I want to move on to our next speaker, our colleague Mark, Deputy Regional Director at UNICEF, covering Middle East and North Africa, here today from Oman. This issue, Mark, has clearly significant implications for children's well-being, as we heard from Habiba and Gaiteri. Would you share with us how UNICEF views this issue from the perspective of its mandate to support children's rights and well-being? And given your work in the MENA region, how does this intersect with regional issues of concern?
Thank you, Yvonne. And it's a real privilege to be in this panel. And thank you again, Habiba and Gaitiri, for your testimony, which is so important for us. Maybe just to say first that promoting equal rights for women and men in national laws is crucial for safeguarding children's rights, ensuring their well-being, and breaking this cycle of discrimination. Providing equal rights means children gain legal recognition, as it was stated, access to services and protection, and enabling them to participate fully in society. I recently took up my post in Amman 2 months ago, actually, and I think it is one of the first things that came to my attention as one of the most pressing issues in this region. So I think this really demands increased attention, even more. In the region, in Middle East and North Africa, 14 countries, 1-4, prevent mothers from equally passing on nationality to their children. Additionally, 16 countries do not allow women to confer nationality to their non-citizen spouses. Every child has the right to an identity, which includes the right to acquire a nationality, as explicitly stated in the Convention of the Right of the Child. The High Commissioner referred to the convention a couple of times. And the convention emphasizes the equal right to confer nationality on children without discrimination on the parent's sex. And it applies to every child within the state's jurisdiction. Article 2 on non-discrimination is very clear about that. The consequences of denying women the right to pass on their nationality to their spouse or children can be severe. And I think we just heard the very difficult example. Children without nationality rights are not protected and may be denied access to education, healthcare, and the ability to pursue their aspirations, as was highlighted by her honorable minister from Liberia. Housing and social protection also may be very much tied to nationality. These discriminatory laws profoundly impact how girls and boys perceive citizenship and belonging. When girls witness their mothers being unable to pass on their nationality to their children equally, and I think, Adriana, you talked about that, it sends a message that girls are considered lesser citizens than boys. Addressing nationality rights is not only an issue of child well-being, but also tied to the overall country and regional stability, which in our region is a major issue. Denying education and livelihood support to children affects their future and hampers the entire country's social and economic development. And in the region grappling with discrimination, conflict, displacement, and statelessness, granting nationality and a passport to every child, mother, and father can be a life-saving measure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you. Let's move on to Catherine Harrington, campaign manager for the Global Campaign for Equal Nationality Rights. Catherine, after hearing these thoughts and remarks and about the laws that cause this harm, it raises the question, why do these discriminatory laws still exist?
Thank you, Yvonne. I want to just quickly thank UNHCR, UNICEF, and UN Women, our co-sponsors, and of course our hosts here. I want to thank my co-panelists, but I also want to give a special thank you to Habiba and Gaitiri for so generously sharing your stories. I can't say enough about how much that means, and thank you. We also have in the room a number of other affected activists and organizations, activists that are working with organizations that are working at the national level that are fighting for gender equal nationality rights. So I really want to honor all of you and my colleagues here for the tireless and absolutely essential work that you're doing. So thank you. So you raise a very good question, Yvonne. Why do these discriminatory laws still exist? Well, first, let's say that the vast majority of countries globally have eliminated, the majority of countries globally have eliminated gender discrimination and nationality laws. 75% of countries globally uphold gender equality in their nationality laws. Just under 90% of countries uphold citizens' equal right to confer nationality on their children, whether that's the mother or the father. At the same time, of course, why we're gathered here today, there are approximately 50 countries where families are suffering unnecessarily every day because of these discriminatory nationality laws. And societies are being held back. And why, if this is the case? So one, there is an important link actually with the legacy of colonialism. For many of the countries that still have gender discrimination in their nationality laws today, many of them, not all, but many are former colonies. And at the time of independence, the norm globally was to have gender discrimination in your nationality laws. And, this might not be surprising as, it's only been a number of decades until we've gotten rid of discrimination in many contexts in terms of women's right to vote, to own property, to be a legal adult in their own right. And so when many of the countries that remain with this discrimination got their independence, the norm at the time, including the former colonial powers, United Kingdom, France, Belgium, et cetera, had gender discrimination in their nationality laws. So many of these nationality laws that are in existence today were modeled on those other discriminatory nationality laws that were the norm at the time. So this is a really important fact because this subverts, it shows the fallacy of the notion that gender discrimination in nationality laws is actually a reflection of any local culture, region, religion, tradition. This is a myth that is held in some contexts, particularly amongst some in countries where these discriminatory laws persist. Gender discrimination in nationality laws is not rooted in any particular culture, region, or religion. In fact, when you think about the values and principles that all of the major religions embrace, the equal dignity of human beings, children and families' well-being, and the sanctity of that, no religions, not a single religion, calls for there to be gender discrimination in nationality laws. This is in reality a question for the civil state, a question of citizenship that is not related to religious beliefs. So what are some other things that we hear that come up in terms of why these laws persist? Well, in many contexts, and it's really unbelievable, or, when you're operating in different contexts, you often hear on the other side of the globe from one country to another, almost identical concerns that are raised by those that might not yet be convinced of the need for reform. So some of the things that can also be raised is concerns around immigration and national identity. Now, these concerns might be thinking about how many foreigners are going to become citizens. Will those other people take our jobs and hurt our economy? So there's a number of issues when you look at actually the economics of this that show that that's not the case. But let me table that for a moment and first say that in the first place, the right of men to confer citizenship is not questioned. That is considered an automatic right. So any of these concerns about immigration or national identity, those don't come up when it comes to men's ability to confer their citizenship. So as was indicated previously by Adriana, this relies on an assumption that it's okay to discriminate against women in the name of these other concerns. In reality, as you can hear, and I'll give another example in a moment, it's gender discrimination and nationality laws that's hurting societies by fostering poverty and exclusion and inhibiting inclusive development. So I'll add one more example from a Nepali mother that I know and have worked with. She was in Nepal and she met a Dutch man. They fell in love and he wanted to propose marriage to her. And she said, I will only marry you if we can raise our family in Nepal. That was her firm requirement? And he said, absolutely. She jokes that her husband became quote unquote more Nepali than she is. He's fluent in Nepali. They raised their children there. Now they were lucky because not all families that have children that don't have citizenship because of this discrimination, their children can't always fully access education. This family was well resourced. They were able to give their two children a good private education at the, coming out of their wallets. Now, those children, when they became young adults, they wanted to follow their professional careers in Nepal, but they didn't have status as citizens. So what did they do? They built very successful careers internationally. And what a loss is that for the country when young adults are forced to seek a life if they have the ability, if they have citizenship from their father and they have a travel document. If they don't have a travel document, then they're in a country and they have no nationality at all, not from their mother, not from their father. So this is just one more example of the ways in which countries are actually shooting themselves in the foot. You have the immense harm caused to affected families, but you have countries actually holding themselves back from benefiting from all of the children and the family members of their citizens' families. So the experiences of other countries that have enacted reforms have shown us that it is every country's best interest to uphold gender equality in their nationality laws. It is the right thing to do to recognize women and men's status as equal citizens. It's the smart thing to do to ensure that families, citizens' families, are included in the social contract, that essential social contract that is citizenship. Lastly, in some contexts, there just frankly is insufficient attention and awareness to this issue. And that is in large part because for many affected families, they're vulnerable because of their children or spouses' lack of status. So they're not comfortable always sharing their stories and their struggles publicly, but they're suffering in silence. So this shows and underscores the importance of joining forces together to ensure that policymakers and the public understand that gender equality and nationality laws is the right thing to do. It's the best thing to do for families, and it's for society's well-being as a whole. So thank you, Yvonne.
Thank you very much, Catherine, for setting the record straight and debunking some of the myths around the root causes of these discriminatory laws. We're going to go into round 2 of questions, and then after that, there will be a break. I want us to continue, as I say, with round 2 of questions, and I want to go back to Adriana from UN Women. Adriana, we've established so far the importance of equal nationality rights to achieving gender equality. How is UN Women working exactly to end this type of discrimination?
Thank you. For UN Women, this is one of the key priorities. As I mentioned, this is one of the targets of the SDGs, and we see it as a lever to the fulfillment of all the other SDG goals. So UN Women leads on the UN Interagency Task Team on combating discriminatory laws, together with a steering committee of prominent organizations working to end discrimination in law, including the global campaign, of course. UN Women leads the Equality in Law for Women and Girls by 2030 initiative. Under this initiative, nationality laws are one of 5 priority themes precisely for the reasons that we have spoken about today. The Rule of Law and Access to Justice team is also working on reviews of legislation in 25 countries, prioritizing those with discriminatory nationality laws, and working with country offices to advocate for reform. Countries being reviewed include Burundi and the Bahamas, both of which do not allow women to confer nationality on an equal basis than men. The Justice and the Law assessment of laws affecting gender equality in the Arab States region is a good example also of the type of work we're doing to continue to highlight this issue and the need for reform. We are very happy to join forces with UNHCR, UNICEF, and the Global Campaign, local and civil society groups to raise awareness amongst policymakers of the harm caused by these laws and benefits of reform. In short, we're very committed to working with the Global Campaign, Catherine, of course, with our partners from the UN and with NGOs that focus on gender discrimination in nationality laws to prevent and reduce statelessness. Please count on us.
Thank you, Adriana. Catherine, looking at this issue from a global perspective, What are the trends you're currently seeing? Are policymakers hearing these sentiments that have been shared? And what actions do you recommend to those who we have in the room today?
Sure, thank you. So the good news is there is clear momentum globally to end gender discrimination in nationality laws. This summit and those that are gathered here to endorse this goal is just one indication of this momentum that we're seeing. I want to emphasize again that gender equal nationality laws support inclusive and sustainable development, and they are also in line with countries' obligations under international law and the conventions that states have elected themselves to ratify and commit themselves to. So there is increasing awareness by policymakers that this reform is needed and should be prioritized and embraced for the reasons that we've heard. Each year, we're seeing progress. Most recently, just in the past few years, we've seen reforms to advance gender equality in nationality laws in countries including Benin, Liberia, Madagascar, Sierra Leone, and others. We're going to hear from additional governments today about their commitments to advance and address this issue, which is, we're so excited to hear from governments in the second section. There's also been important progress at the regional level. The West African organization ECOWAS has had a declaration that was endorsed by all ECOWAS member states in 2015 that calls for steps to eradicate statelessness, including upholding gender equality in nationality laws in line with countries' CEDAW obligations. So this Abidjan declaration was endorsed and signed by all ministers of justice for each ECOWAS member state. And we've seen similar declarations that have also been endorsed in other regions, including in the Great Lakes region, in the Southern African Development Forum, Parliamentary Forum, that was endorsed by parliamentarians there. And in 2018, the Arab League introduced the Arab Declaration on Belonging and Legal Identity, which calls on all Arab League members to uphold gender equality in their nationality laws, including women's equal right to confer citizenship to their children and their spouse. We're also seeing that the importance of ending gender discrimination in nationality laws is also consistently being raised by international human rights bodies, including the Committee on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, the Committee on the Rights of the Child, and through the Universal Periodic Review process, where peer member states are raising recommendations to countries under review when this issue is of a concern. Most importantly, because this issue can only be addressed by political leadership and will and action at the national level. We're seeing across impacted countries, affected mothers, children, political, civil society, and religious leaders coming together and calling for reforms. We're seeing courts affirming that constitutional articles that call for non-discrimination mean that nationality laws must uphold women and men's equality. At the same time, we must also recognize that in a portion of the countries where these discriminatory laws persist, there has yet to see at least a real commitment to address this issue. Or there have been very minor reforms that are proposed or enacted that might give women the chance to apply for their child to access citizenship, but only if they meet certain requirements. And this is still at the discretion of the state. And in fact, these laws even are rarely or unequally applied. In these same countries, children of male citizens automatically, without question, get citizenship by right. However, in many of these same countries as well, they have expressed a firm interest in advancing ambitious development plans, and they have expressed their interest to support women's economic empowerment and other forms of empowerment for women. Of course, we have to recognize that these bold development plans and the goal of supporting women's empowerment cannot be achieved without gender equality and nationality laws. This is something that I hope can be increasingly better appreciated and embraced everywhere. So what are the actions that we're calling for? Reforms without delay so that all citizens have the right, regardless of their sex, their gender, their marital status, that all parents, regardless of whether they're a mother or father, that all citizens have the equal right, regardless of gender, to confer nationality on their children and on their spouse, and to acquire, change, and retain their own nationality. We urge policymakers in affected countries that want to be leaders on this issue to work with affected people, that every policymaker should be talking with affected persons in their country. Those affected communities and activists will help give you the information that you need to convince your colleagues and other policymakers about why this reform is so essential. For other states and international organizations that want to champion this issue, again, you can hear from what we've heard today that this is such a cross-cutting human rights issue. Help to make these connections on how this issue intersects with other key human rights areas that are being raised in international fora, in your bilateral diplomacy, through the Universal Periodic Review process. And civil society, and I know we have many colleagues, not just in this room, but online. This is an issue, again, that intersects with so many areas: gender equality, children's well-being, displacement, development. We call on all of you to join forces with us and inform your colleagues about how this issue intersects with their work. Work in solidarity with those that are fighting for reforms and ensure that this work is centered on the experiences and voices of affected activists. So I thank you for all of your support and attendance here today, and we really look forward to continuing on this work with all of you for equality to be represented in nationality laws. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Thank you. Mark, I want to ask you what trends you're seeing in the MENA region.
Well, let me also start by noting some positive trends, in this case in the Middle East and North Africa region. Several countries have taken steps to reform their nationality laws. I'd like to mention Tunisia first. Tunisia amended its nationality law in 2010, granting women equal rights to transmit nationality to their children. And Algeria in 2005 also revised its law accordingly. And also I'd like to mention Morocco. Morocco made significant changes in 2007, enabling women to pass on nationality to their children born to foreign fathers. So there are some good examples. And also I want to salute the League of Arab States for the Arab Declaration on Belonging and Legal Identity. Having said that, I think the road is still very long in the region. There is a long way to go, unfortunately. And I think we can take example on those few countries. And like to borrow from Catherine's words, I think from where we stand, that addressing gender equality in national laws is not only the right thing to do, but certainly the smart thing to do to enhance social cohesion, inclusive development, and stability across the region. So you can count on UNICEF to continue working with you to address this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you. I want to take the conversation back to the two affected mothers that we have with us today before we close this segment of the program. Gaithiri, I want to come back to you. I understand your efforts in partnership with Family Frontiers has resulted in substantial momentum for reform and some promising steps. Would you tell us about these recent developments and how you feel about them?
Thank you. As Catherine said, we have come a long way, and there is so much momentum at the moment for the change to happen. I believe it has been the tireless effort of Family Frontiers and the network of mothers who have pushed for this reform, who have stepped up and are showing and sharing our stories to create awareness and to urge for change so that we are seen as equal under the law. In December 2020, Family Frontiers and 6 mothers filed a case at the High Court and to basically fight for equal rights to confer citizenship to the children of Malaysian mothers on an equal basis as Malaysian men. And in September 2021, the High Court ruled in our favor. It was a historic victory. We were so joyful. And I remember the call that we got on right after the announcement. I see Vina smiling in the audience. There was so many tears of joy. It was historic. But just a few days later, the government filed an appeal. and we were heartbroken. And what was to follow was devastating, as in August 2022, the Court of Appeal overturned the High Court ruling in a 2-1 decision. Family Frontiers has applied for a leave to appeal at the federal court, and right now, that was granted in December of 2022. And right now, we are waiting for a hearing date for this appeal to be heard in the highest court of this country. I think what I want to lift up in this journey of the court case is that although the last outcome at the Court of Appeal wasn't favorable, it's the incredible level of awareness and conversations that it has sparked. So many people have come to me to share how they were not aware that this was happening to Malaysian women in this day and age. And so that awareness, I think, has really been something that has kept us going and wanting to continue to share our stories. At the same time, we are witnessing bipartisan support on this issue on a political spectrum in Malaysia. This had been an election issue last year and was included in the manifesto of all the major parties and coalition prior to the election. And since the election, the cabinet has committed to amending the constitution. It does need a 2/3 vote at the parliament and approval from the conference of rulers. So we still have a ways to go. We mothers are cautiously optimistic and hope that the members of parliament from both sides, from all sides, will come together to pass this amendment in the parliament that is going to be in September of 2023. Initially, we were told that the vote would take place in March of 2023, which then got pushed to June of 2023. And now the latest we have heard is that it will be tabled in September of 2023. And we hope that there won't be any more further delays. In most recent news over the last few days, we have heard that the government is finalizing the proposed amendments to be tabled at that parliament based on the findings from a committee that was established to study this issue. I think I just want to stress on the urgent action and why this reform needs to happen sooner rather than later. What is important now is really for the government and all the members of parliament who will be voting at parliament to see how this impacts us mothers and our children. As we wait, our children continue to face difficulties in accessing basic public services, such as education and healthcare. Mothers right now are working through very complicated and bureaucratic processes just to sign up our children for primary schooling, for schools. And when they do get signed up, they face a delay between 2 to 8 weeks. They start their school later than the children of Malaysian children. Also, a less spoken issue is the mental health toll and the psychological impacts of facing such discrimination. Personally, I've had a very difficult few years with my dad's illness and subsequent death. I'm grieving him deeply, and I know he championed my fight for my daughter's citizenship right up to the very end. Even as I was caregiving for my dad, you know, I was writing stories, appearing on panels with the support of Family Frontiers, all to bring awareness to this issue. It eats into every aspect of your life. It takes away from time and energy that can otherwise be spent doing what other mothers, wives, sisters, and daughters are doing with their time and their lives. So really, we welcome the move by the government to table the amendment in September that will end our struggles. It is long overdue. We urge the government to fulfill its promise to grant equal rights to Malaysian women, to confer automatic citizenship to our children on the equal basis as men without delay. Thank you.
Thank you again, Gaithiri. I want to give the floor to Habiba. Habiba, what do you want policymakers to know about this issue? what words would you leave with them?
I promise you, I'm not usually this emotional, but I just remember that tomorrow my son is turning 25 and it's been a long journey. On 16th April this year, the Sultan of Oman issued a royal decree on the marriage of Omanis to foreigners that abolishes the requirement of to get a permission from the Ministry of Interior, and that for both men and women. When you hear it, it's a good news. And well, oh, finally, but actually, provided that it does not conflict with the Sharia law or the public order in Oman. So we're back to the point zero. Of course, this is, to me, is an extra bonus for men and nothing changed for women, because men and women had to apply for a permit, and women were, regardless of the permit, like myself, they did get married from abroad. But what happened now, the men, they're enjoying to marry whoever they want, and the children can become automatically Omani, and the wives can become Omani later on and have all the rights. Even if a foreign wife, the husband, the Omani husband, dead or divorced, they still can stay in the country, while the Omani women can only get married and get punished by the law. So the law did not change. My son today, he's visiting Oman with a tourist visa. And last time he was there, I gave him a power of attorney. And when he went, he did not exist in the system. Our kids are treated like ghosts. They are not registered in our countries, and they don't recognize them as the children of Omanis. So the ability for policymakers, the ability to benefit the lives of countless families and benefit from all of these family members' contributions to society. Families are suffering every day, but they do not need to be so. Governments, policymakers have the power to make this suffering and this injustice go away. Legal reform is required to uphold women and men's equal right to confer nationality on their children and spouses. And we need bold leadership. Know that when you become a leader in calling for reforms to uphold gender equality, nationality laws, you are doing what is just, what is right, and you are doing what is in your country's best interest. Also remember that our parliament has no power to change any legislation or laws in Oman. They are like just ask them to do a study or ideas, and then the government doesn't have to comply. Citizens' children want to be contribute to their mothers' countries, which they consider they're the children countries. They deserve the right to belong, and women deserve to be treated as equal citizens. It does not need to be complicated. Most countries in the world have demonstrated that this can be done and that it should not be feared. We are not asking for charity. We are calling for our equal rights, and we are calling for all those with influence, political leaders, and all those who have asserted they are committed to helping their country's women to take up this issue and work with us to achieve an end to this unnecessary problem. We know that countries will have a brighter future when they uphold citizens' equal right to pass citizenship. We are looking to you, all those with influence in this room and online, to be a leader on this issue, a leader for equal citizenship for women and men in 2023. Please act now. We are watching you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Habiba. Thank you. We have come to the end of the first segment of today's program. I don't know whether we can go on for a few more seconds, some fire round. Nope, no, no. Okay, that was a no. So we can't go back to the panelists, but I think everybody has been moved by what they've heard from each of the panelists. We do now have time for a break, but we are cutting the break down. We've eaten into the break. So we're going to have a 5-minute break, bathroom break, maybe a glass of water. And then we are going to continue with segment 2 of the program, which will focus on some of the positive steps that have been taken and focus on countries who want to announce measures to end gender discrimination in nationality laws. I want to thank all the amazing panelists here, Habiba, Gaiteri, Mark, Adriana, and Catherine. A round of applause for them. I think it's been really amazing. And I think we've all learned so much. I'm going to let you all go back to your seats. It is now 3:45, so we will resume at 3:50. That is in 6 minutes. Okay. Thank you very much. If everybody could have their seats. I think I can maybe start. I think most people are back in the room. Okay, so for the next hour or more, we're going to now shift the focus of what we've been discussing to A, celebrating countries who have already taken positive steps, and B, maybe most importantly, countries who want to announce measures to end gender discrimination in nationality laws. It gives me great pleasure to welcome and introduce somebody I greatly admire. She doesn't know me, but I know her. Gillian Triggs, the Assistant High Commissioner for Protection at UNHCR, to moderate this state segment of the program. Can we give her a warm round of applause as she takes the lead?
You're right there. Go for it. Well, thank you, Yvonne, and thank you all, and for coming back into the room quite so quickly. It is in some ways very, very hard to follow what we've just been hearing. It always has the greatest impression on us when we hear from the people who've actually suffered the consequences of this gender inequality and inability to get that recognition for themselves and for their children. So I do so with some modesty, certainly, in moving to the next stage. But now, really, everything we've just heard prompts the question, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to achieve change? How do we garner the political will to make that change? Well, I won't go into any long introduction, much as I would like to, but I know that the Indonesian ambassador needs to move on. And so we're going to move on very quickly. So it's my very great pleasure indeed to invite His Excellency Febrian Lajad, the permanent representative of Indonesia here in Geneva, to speak about how Indonesia has actually moved things on and helped to address the stories and the plights that we heard earlier today. Thank you very much. And please welcome the ambassador.
Colleagues, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank all the parties who take part to organize this important summit. And I would also like to thank you for inviting Indonesia to share our experience in establishing our nationality reform. The thing that I will share with you is I may consider myself as an older generation, but when I was younger, it's something unimaginable that we will have this kind of reform. I will share with you later on, but this is just my introduction, how our life as a country has moved very fast since our political reform back in 1998. Indeed, the topic that we discussed today is eminent, and I'm happy to address this summit today. Let me begin by stating that the evolution of our nationality laws has come hand in hand with our history of national building. Since our independence back in 1945, we have enacted 3 laws in relation to nationality. First in 1946, and then 1958, and the latest one, 2006. And throughout those 3 laws, we have seen a series of major development in our national regime, specifically on the issue of human rights, and more particularly on gender equality, women and children's rights, and we really did make a progressive achievement. Back then, according to the 1946 and 1958 laws, the nationality status of a wife and a child really depend on the status of the husband or the father. A woman during her marriage should have the same nationality with her husband. She had no right whatsoever to change her nationality. Moreover, the nationality of mother couldn't be the basic to confer her children nationality. Today, through the existing national law of 2006, the nationality regime is more robust than its predecessor. Let me share a short background that became the force of the nationality law reform. In 1998, we started our political reform and democratization process. And after that, things never be the same again. The government was mandated by the people to do a series of major works in amending the constitution and law, guided by human rights principle. This is not the case before. In the 2002, our constitution was amended and 10 additional human rights clauses were added. These include one clause which states that every person shall have the right to nationality, and one clause that ensures every person has the right to choose his or her preferred nationality. The amended constitution became the ground mandate to create a new nationality law that provides a better respect and protection of human rights, in particular for women and children, without any form of discrimination. And today, any child whose father and or mother has Indonesian nationality, born in Indonesia or abroad, is entitled to have Indonesian nationality. These include, to the extent to children born in Indonesia to unknown parents, children born in Indonesia whose parents are stateless, and also children born out of wedlock. The law has introduced a limited dual citizenship. This is the thing that unimaginable, even 10 years before that. For children born from international marriage. To be honest, now I'm the beneficiary of this because my son was married to ladies from Australia. So I think at some point we will come to that point for me. When the children reach their age of maturity, they can choose whether they want to be an Indonesian or the other nationality. And this differs from our previous nationality law, where a child must follow his father's Indonesian nationality since they were born, even though the mother possesses different nationality. Lastly, I would like to emphasize that the existing nationality law works in line with our international obligation to CEDAW and CRC. It provides equal right to men and women to determine their children's nationality and also to put best interests of the children. The nationality law reform also upheld women's right to confer nationality on a foreign spouse on an equal basis with men. Let me conclude by giving you several takeaways. First, our existing national law is fruition of our democratization process. It will not happen if in 1998 we didn't have the political reform and democratization. It was born out of the growing movement and demand of human rights in the late 1990s and early 2000s to create a series of national legal reform that would provide better safeguard for human rights. Secondly, the law is an exemplary of an achievement created by constructive collaboration between government official, member of parliament, civil society, and also scholar. As I look at the history surrounding this creation law, I found it that the first bill was initiated back in 1997, and it took around 8 years, working back and forth between all stakeholders to finally found a common ground in establishing a better nationality law that upholds human rights. Thirdly, we must always be open, and we must always open the channel of dialogue to learn from each other. And the law was considered revolutionary in the 2000s, but the challenges we face for the next decade could be different. This is why a summit like this is one of very important, so that government, scholar, as well as civil society can share their good practices that we can learn from each other. That's where I would like to stop it here, and thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. We really appreciate those remarks, and also the point that you made, the importance of the adoption by a government of democratic processes and international human rights law, and then you can start to see the improvements as the years go by. So thank you very much indeed for giving us your, I know, very valuable time. Before I introduce the next speaker, I thought I might explain why UNHCR is involved in this conference at all. What does a discriminatory nationality law have to do with our work and our mandate on refugees? Well, as many of you I hope will know, the General Assembly has given the UN Refugee Agency a specific mandate to work on reducing statelessness. And of course, it is true that statelessness in itself can be a cause of forced displacement, hence refugee status, but equally, displacement can itself be the cause of statelessness when it becomes so difficult for children to be registered, for people to lose their documentation and be unable to replace them, and so on. So it's a matter of deep concern to the UN Refugee Agency and, of course, to the implementation of fundamental principles of human rights law. As the High Commissioner mentioned, the right to nationality was proposed in 1948, when we had the Universal Declaration of Human Rights under the leadership of that remarkable woman, of course, Eleanor Roosevelt. So the critical question that we're really looking at in this segment is what are the responses? How can we deal with this issue of nationality laws? And from the point of view of statelessness, UNHCR has taken on this extraordinary obligation to bring an end to statelessness by the end of next year, the I Belong campaign, which has now been going for more than 8 years. There have been very considerable successes, but we have a great deal more to do. And that is why it's so important that in this segment, we look at what it is that governments are doing to take the courageous and bold steps in many of their jurisdictions to reform their laws. It's critical, we think, to achieving the outcome ultimately of the I Belong campaign. So we need to understand political will. What is it that is needed to garner political will? And so my last comment really is that is why this meeting is so important, because political will can be generated, but we need to do it by engaging civil society, government representatives, international organizations, the agencies within the UN, in order to create the political will that can lead to the legislative changes. So can I now introduce Ms. Amina Bayash, the president of the National Human Rights Institution from Morocco. He's going to tell us a little bit about their law reform initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I will speak in French. Then everyone puts who don't speak French. Then permettez-moi tout d'abord, mesdames et messieurs, de remercier les organisateurs d'avoir invité le Conseil national des droits de l'homme Maroc. Bien sûr, ravi de prendre part à cet échange important autour d'une thématique qui se trouve au cœur de la mise en œuvre du principe de l'égalité entre les hommes et les femmes. Éventuellement, les questions relatives à la nationalité posent toujours des défis pour nous, défenseurs des droits humains. Car il ne s'agit pas simplement des questions d'ordre législatif, juridique ou judiciaire, mais surtout des processus profondément culturels et sociétaux qui touchent à ce qu'il y a de plus profond pour tout être humain: la relation à la mère, à la famille, l'identité et de manière plus globale, le statut de la citoyenneté. Si la législation relative à l'organisation des relations de famille et à l'accès à la nationalité a été adoptée juste après l'indépendance du Maroc en 1958, elle a toujours fait l'objet de mobilisation constante pour sa réforme. Je tiens ici à partager avec l'honorable audience le contexte de ces réformes. La lutte contre l'inégalité des genres et la discrimination qui en découle ont toujours fait l'objet d'évaluation des acteurs de la société civile marocaine. C'est ainsi que des campagnes visant la réforme du code de statut personnel ainsi que celui de la nationalité ont été lancées par les associations des droits humains. Cette mobilisation a commencé à porter ses fruits en 1993 avec une première réforme que nous jugeons en tant qu'acteurs des droits de l'homme partielle du Code de la famille, mais en même temps, c'était la ratification de la CEDAW avec quelques réserves. Ces deux décisions ont donné un élan aux défenseurs des droits humains. C'est ainsi qu'une réforme intégrale du Code de la famille a été promulguée en 2004, consacrant l'égalité entre les époux et leurs responsabilités partagées au sein de la famille. Ce nouveau code, fruit d'un arbitrage royal, peut-être lors de la discussion on en parlera, a cependant relevé la nécessité d'harmoniser le code de la nationalité et le code de la famille. Eu égard au nombre croissant des femmes marocaines mariées à des étrangers qui revendiquaient, et avec le soutien de la société civile marocaine, en tant que citoyennes, le droit de transmettre leur nationalité à leurs époux et à leurs enfants. En conséquence, donc, et à l'occasion d'un deuxième arbitrage royal, une nouvelle réforme permettant à toute mère marocaine de transmettre sa nationalité à ses enfants d'un mariage de père étranger fut annoncée en 2005. La promulgation donc fut en 2007. Cette promulgation a mis terme à l'inégalité qui existait entre l'homme et la femme ou le père et la mère marocaine. Elle a accordé, en vertu de l'article 6, le droit aux femmes marocaines de transmettre automatiquement leur nationalité à leurs enfants, avec effet, plus important, avec effet rétroactif et sans distinction de la confession ou de la religion de la femme marocaine. Éventuellement, cette réforme a eu un impact important. La première, c'est la reconnaissance de la pleine citoyenneté marocaine des enfants, de couples mixtes. Donc, cet impact quand même a eu des incidents importants au niveau social, juridique, politique et autres. La première, c'est que les enfants sont inscrits automatiquement sur le registre de naissance de l'état civil marocain. La résidence des enfants, c'est-à-dire que les enfants ne sont pas soumis à la réglementation de séjour des étrangers. Droit de circuler, les enfants ne sont plus tenus d'obtenir le visa d'entrée au Maroc. Droit à l'éducation, les enfants ne sont plus considérés comme des étudiants étrangers, ils n'obéissent pas à quota des étudiants aux établissements de l'enseignement supérieur. Droit au travail, ils ont le droit d'accéder directement aux postes publics, ne sont plus soumis à la réglementation du secteur privé et peuvent exercer des professions libérales. Droit politique, d'être candidat, représentant et participer à l'action publique et représenter le pays. Droit à la propriété privée, c'est-à-dire comme en tant que Marocains, ne sont pas soumis à des réglementations pour les étrangers. Mais la réforme, à mon avis, a eu un impact important. C'est qu'un certain nombre d'enfants qui auparavant étaient de fait apatrides avaient recouvert la nationalité vivant sur le territoire marocain. Ce même statut maintenant fait bénéficier à des milliers d'enfants qui sont le résultat ou le produit ou le fruit de mariages mixtes, surtout des femmes marocaines à des migrants, surtout de notre continent africain et aussi du monde et de la région MENA. Bien évidemment, le plus important aussi, il y avait une circulaire importante de la mise en œuvre de cette réforme qui était adressée à toutes les administrations et les consulaires. Mais le plus important, à mon avis, qu'il faut retenir, c'est que ce circulaire précise que la présentation de l'acte de mariage des parents n'est pas une condition de l'inscription des enfants nés de mère marocaine avec un étranger. Donc, ces enfants, même dans un cadre, je dirais, un mariage institutionnel, bénéficient de droits de la nationalité marocaine. Puis évidemment, ces réformes ont eu un impact important dans le développement et l'amélioration et l'engagement universel du Royaume du Maroc, qui a retiré ses réserves portant sur le deuxième paragraphe de l'article 9 et ses réserves de l'article 16 qu'il avait émis lors de la ratification en 1993. Le Maroc éventuellement dans ce processus de réforme, a adhéré en février 2022 et qui est rentré en vigueur en juillet 2022, son adhésion au protocole facultatif de la CEDAW. Effectivement, cette adhésion réitère vraiment est très importante pour nous, le choix irréversible pour notre pays et les militants que nous sommes des droits de l'homme, la volonté de lutter contre les discriminations basées sur le genre en offrant aux citoyennes marocaines un recours juridique supplémentaire auprès de CEDAW. J'aimerais quand même, et en suivant le débat de tout à l'heure, les témoignages vraiment poignants de Habiba et de Siva, je pense que l'essentiel de le champ de réforme que nous avons suivi au Maroc, c'est de reconnaître les femmes comme sujets de plein droit dans un état de droit. Et donc ce cadre a fait et fait toujours la mobilisation permanente au Maroc dans le but de consolider le choix irréversible pour la garantie des droits de tous. Ce choix s'exprime au sein d'un processus de réforme structurante de la société, inscrit dans une dynamique consultative très importante de tous les acteurs institutionnels et non institutionnels, comme ce fut le cas, et on a réussi à avancer, le Code de la famille actuel, la constitution marocaine, mais aussi un cadre très très important, c'est le droit des femmes à faire bénéficier et à hériter ce qu'on appelle les terres sous la liette, c'est les terres collectives et d'être partie prenante dans ce terre collective. La réforme donc du Code de la nationalité ne peut se comprendre au Maroc que dans ce contexte global de réforme politique, sociale et judiciaire et juridique et légale, visant à mettre fin à une injustice longtemps vécue par les femmes comme une violence institutionnelle et par les Marocaines mariées à des étrangers extrêmement comme un comportement extrêmement blessant vis-à-vis de leur identité et de leur culture. Je dirais que cette réforme importante pour nous, j'ai oublié ma dernière, comme ça, sorry, hein. C'est uniquement pour terminer et partager avec vous qu'au Maroc, nous avons fait du chemin. Nous avons traversé des déserts, mais aussi des acquis. Beaucoup reste à faire, nous sommes conscients. La nécessité d'amender l'article 10 qui permet aux femmes de transmettre leur nationalité à son époux. La lutte pour l'égalité des genres doit se faire de manière, pour nous, d'une manière continue et transversale. Continue car il doit toujours s'adapter aux évolutions et aux cas que nous enregistrons. Les témoignages, les auditions sont un cadre important de comprendre les évolutions. Transversale car il doit toujours s'adapter aux évolutions de la société. Transversale car il doit être aussi le fondement des politiques publiques. Des politiques publiques, c'est là le nouveau champ de bataille et de lutte de la société marocaine pour l'égalité. J'aimerais aussi rappeler ici qu'une nouvelle étape de réforme du Code de la famille est en cours au Maroc. Le discours de Sa Majesté le Roi, en juillet dernier, avait annoncé cette réforme suite aussi à une évaluation de la société civile et de plusieurs institutions lors de la mise en œuvre du Code de la famille en 2004. Permet d'ancrer encore plus le principe d'égalité et de répondre à la dynamique constante. Le cadre de la réforme, tel qu'annoncé, c'est que dans le Maroc d'aujourd'hui, il n'est plus possible que les femmes soient privées de leurs droits. Croisons les bras, croisons les doigts, que le Parlement marocain puisse aussi entendre ce cadre d'annonce pour la réforme, pour l'égalité femmes et hommes au Maroc. Merci beaucoup.
because you are both, you're an advocate, but you have a direct road to the government as well as to civil society. It's a bridge between the two, and you can really make a change happen. So thank you very much. And of course, the other point you make that is so powerful is why we need to ratify Saydee-Tarr and a lot of other international treaties, because that gives us the legal foundation to make the advocacy that you've been so powerful in delivering. So now I'm really pleased indeed to invite Her Excellency Bathsheba Crocker, who is the permanent representative of the United States of America to the United Nations. And we're very interested to hear from you why the US supports reform of gender discrimination in nationality law. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much, Gillian, and excellencies and esteemed colleagues. Thank you to the Women's Refugee Commission, the Global Campaign for Equal Nationality Rights, and our partners at UNHCR, UNICEF, and UN Women for convening this important summit. I am honored to be with you today representing the United States, a nation that has long championed women's rights, including those related to nationality. To be clear, women's equal nationality rights aren't just a corner of democracy. They are the cornerstone, the heart. As Hannah Arendt put it, citizenship is the right to have rights. Statelessness is not an abstract concern. It has profound and often lifelong impacts. It can prevent someone from obtaining identity documentation, block access to public services like education and healthcare, and create barriers to employment and property rights. It restricts an individual's ability to move freely, tears families apart, and pushes people to live in the precarious margins of society. Thankfully, we can do more than just analyze statelessness as a problem. With political will, as Gillian was speaking about earlier, we can overcome it. For our part, the United States has advocated for women's equal nationality rights in numerous forums, from the UN Human Rights Council to the UN Commission on the Status of Women. In 2019, we pledged at the high-level segment on statelessness to champion law reforms in those countries with nationality laws that discriminate against women. And since our 2019 pledge, we have dedicated at least $3.7 million to support the hard work and coordinated advocacy that has driven meaningful progress toward ending statelessness around the world. In the upcoming 53rd session of the Human Rights Council, the United States will put forward a resolution together with Australia, Colombia, Mexico, and Slovakia aimed at ending arbitrary or unlawful discrimination in nationality laws, another example of our dedication to solutions to end statelessness. We are the largest single donor to UNHCR, the UN body mandated to combat statelessness, and we actively support the I Belong campaign to end statelessness through our leadership of the Friends Group and through diplomatic advocacy in Geneva and further afield. But of course, statelessness won't be solved through the actions of any one of us alone, and we applaud and back the powerful work being done by community-led movements and civil society organizations that tirelessly advocate for families and children and that spearhead change. And there has been progress. A decade ago, 30 countries denied women the right to confer citizenship to their children on an equal basis with men. Today, that number is down to 25. So progress, but there's still much more to be done. Today's summit forces us to confront the costs of discrimination against women and nationality laws, a phenomenon that impedes progress for entire societies. It is an issue that cuts across themes from women's rights and access to full and equal participation in governance, to economic development, human trafficking, and our ability to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. When we deny women the ability to pass their nationality on equal terms with men, we risk denying children birth registration and their right to a nationality. Lack of documentation hinders children's ability to acquire a legal identity, access services and education, and later to participate fully and equally in political and economic life as adults. Statelessness and disenfranchisement deeply rooted in gender discrimination are significant drivers of inequality. To achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, we need to tackle these drivers head on, as recognized by SDG 16's call for providing legal identity for all, including birth registration by 2030, an essential element for progress on several other SDGs. The United States stands with you in this great effort to end statelessness and discrimination against women in nationality laws. I thank you all, the dedicated participants here today, for your relentless efforts in this monumental task. Together, we will make a difference. Together, we can ensure that every person, regardless of gender, has a nationality. And together, we will end statelessness. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And of course, you do make the point that we can understand the problem and the destruction that it brings to societies and to individual personal lives. But of course, it's always wonderful to hear from the United States that moves towards solutions, and your support in achieving those solutions is very important to us. Thank you very much indeed. And can I now invite His Excellency Jeff Roach, who is the Deputy Permanent Representative of Australia, also to explain how and why Australia supports gender discrimination or reform of it in nationality. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gillian, and my thank you to the organisers of this terrific global summit. Today, we've heard some incredible testimonies, and I wanted to firstly say thank you to those who were on the panel earlier this afternoon, and to you, Gillian, for the great personal commitment and leadership that you are showing to this initiative. The theme that Ambassador Crocker and I were invited to speak about is, of course, advancing gender equality and nationality laws. I'm mindful that I'm the final speaker before we get to the next session, which is nicely themed as planned action. And I think that's actually what we really want to be hearing a little bit later. So I'll keep my remarks quick so that we can actually hear some terrific stories about reforms that are coming down the track in terms of lifting this growing sense of global consensus that we simply need to be reinforcing, and what this summit is aiming to do. In terms of course, advancing gender equality, one of the panelists earlier today made, I thought, the really important point. It begins with civil society. And in that regard, I just wanted to say the personal testimonies that we heard from Habiba and Gaitiri were absolutely compelling. And I'm sure that neither of you embarked in life expecting that you would become advocates, but circumstances have forced otherwise. And with every great fight that there is against injustice globally, at its heart is this sense of the personal testimony with an irrefutable, and I'd say grain of truth, only it's not a grain, it's a mountain of truth. Why are children and their mothers subject to this condemnation of precariousness and disadvantage that we have heard today? In terms of thinking about where the international lens on this issue, it was heartening indeed to hear from the ambassador of Indonesia, and in terms of the reforms pursued there in 2002 by President Abdurrahman, it was a transformational time for Indonesian society. Equally, we have seen in the last couple of years in the Philippines, reforms that very promisingly are now expediting naturalization for refugees and statelessness people so that they are able to have the documentation that will stop the inherent disadvantage and discrimination that they will otherwise have to experience. It begins with powerful stories being told in each society and within each nation state, and ultimately it will be the parliaments and the executive governments that will need to confront this. But we as a global community can help and rally around that. There's a lot of ways that we can be doing it. And from an Australian perspective, we have placed advancing gender equality as the absolute formational pillar of our $4 billion development program. every piece of development work we do, whether it's supporting civil society or building a road, we analyze and think it through from a gender perspective, because we have, I think, over the course of generations learnt that we need to understand always the implications of the decisions that we make. Convening dialogues and supporting dialogues such as today is a really important part of it. We need to show solidarity with our civil society partners, but we also need to learn from each other. The advocacy that sits behind the I Belong campaign, the work in the Human Rights Council that Ambassador Crock was mentioning, the core group on the group of friends around this initiative, all of this is around making sure that this issue keeps being pushed to the top of international considerations. At the end of the day, there is so much in this world that our national parliaments and our executive governments cannot control. They cannot by themselves solve some of the massive humanitarian and climate change crises that we're confronting. They cannot by themselves, acting independently, solve so much of the indebtedness and economic development challenges that we see. But they can tackle the inherent intergenerational inequity that these discriminatory laws put in place. Because ultimately, if children cannot access school, they cannot access healthcare, they cannot enter the economy, they cannot enter banking, why would we design a system that creates such intergenerational inequity? This is something which sometimes needs to be said in a different way, in a softer way, but I think the advocacy challenge is there for us all. Thank you for the invitation to speak today, and we look forward to working with you on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, and you make the very important point that we cannot achieve the development agenda and, of course, the Sustainable Development Goals without investing in gender equality and of course, in nationality rules. Now we move to the planned action as part of this session, and I'm now very pleased to invite the Honourable Minister Filippo Buthelezi, who is the Minister for Labour and Social Security for Eswatini. She's going to talk about the government's commitment to reforming the constitution and the advances that have been made in achieving that goal. Thank you very much.
Program Director. Greetings to you, Madam. Filippo Grandi, UN High Commissioner for Refugees. Mark Rubin, UNICEF Deputy Regional Director for MENA. Catherine Harrington, Global Campaign for Equal Nationality Rights. Adriana Quinones, UN Women. Esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I'm standing in on behalf of my colleague, the Honorable Minister for Home Affairs, Her Royal Highness Princess Lindiwe, who couldn't be a part of this event due to other equally important engagements. I'm standing in for her, and she sends her regards to her counterparts, their excellencies, and the entire congregation this afternoon. To ensure brevity, I'll just stick to what I've been requested to say on her behalf. Thank you. And I'll try not to take a lot of time articulating her remarks for this congregation. Your Excellencies, His Majesty's government is pleased to have been invited to participate at this global summit on achieving gender equality in nationality laws. The Kingdom of Eswatini aligns itself with the global campaign against statelessness and remedial measures are being progressively implemented towards this goal. The Kingdom has also acceded to the 1954 Convention on the Protection of Stateless Persons and the 1961 Convention on the Reduction of Statelessness. In an endeavor to address inequality and prevent statelessness, the government adopted the National Action Plan to eradicate and prevent statelessness in 2019. Furthermore, the government committed by making 4 pledges to eradicate statelessness by 2024 in line with the hashtag #IBelong campaign. We have also held extensive consultations on the prevention and eradication of statelessness with stakeholders, including the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, other UN agencies, government agencies, civil society, parliament, and affected persons. Ladies and gentlemen, His Majesty's government further recognizes that gender discriminatory provisions in nationality laws have a negative impact on society, mostly to children that do not have the right to their mother's nationality. I am therefore happy to report that just a few days ago, on the 8th of June, 2023, the National Civil Registration and Vital Statistics Bill was passed by both chambers of parliament. This bill seeks to, amongst other things, remove the gender discriminatory provisions which exist in the current Births, Marriages and Deaths Act of 1983. The government is also implementing the recommendations made to the country during its last Universal Periodic Review. Further progress has been achieved following the appointment in 2018 of the focal person on statelessness in line with the 2017 Migration Dialogue recommendations. The focal person is responsible for, amongst other things, coordinating statelessness activities in the Kingdom. In 2019, the government, along with civil society, adopted a national action plan to eradicate statelessness, which was approved by Cabinet. And on March 17 last year, the Ministry of Home Affairs entered into a memorandum of understanding with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees on the implementation of the National Action Plan. The Kingdom of Eswatini was amongst the first countries within the region to have adopted a National Action Plan, and the political will thus demonstrated qualified Eswatini to receive funding, which will also support the study on the stateless population. A mop-up exercise to scale up birth registration was commissioned along with the study on the stateless population. The report on the qualitative study on statelessness was validated at a meeting held with stakeholders on the 19th of June, 2023. The Kingdom has also participated in discussions on and supported the adoption of the draft protocol to the Charter on Human and People's Rights on the specific aspects of the right to nationality and eradication of statelessness in Africa. We look forward to the support of our partners in mainstreaming these instruments into our national policies. Eswatini is determined to eradicate discriminatory laws that hold us back from achieving sustainable development goals. Therefore, the government has prioritized the harmonization of our laws with the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women and the Convention on the Rights of the Child. The family laws, such as the Marriages Act of 1984, are currently before Parliament for consideration and approval. Both the Marriages Bill and the Matrimonial Property Bill seek to promote and protect the rights of women and children. The Sexual Offences and Domestic Violence Act, promulgated in 2018, has played a significant role in protecting the rights of women. This underlines the concrete steps taken by the country in closing the inequality gap between men and women. As I conclude, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, The Kingdom of Eswatini is proud to affirm its commitments to uphold gender equality in our laws. This will be carried out diligently in a framework of national consultations, as well as in collaboration with our international partners. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Minister, and thank you for that very encouraging news with the passing of the bill. I could see my colleagues writing this down with great interest, and we hope that that's something we can mention at the Global Refugee Forum at the end of the year. Thank you very much indeed. So now I'd like to welcome the Major General Nashat Ibrahim Salal Al-Kafaji, who is from the Ministry of the Interior of Iraq. And he also is going to speak about how Iraq is planning to address gender discrimination in its nationality laws. Thank you very much. Please welcome him.
Thank you. بداية أستهل كلمتي بقتبس من كلام الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منها رجالا كثيرا ونساء. صدق الله العلي العظيم. السيدات والسادة الحضور الأفاضل المحترمون، السيدات والسادة القائمون على إعداد مؤتمر القمة العالمية حول تحقيق المساواة بين الجنسين المحترمون، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يسعدني أن أنقل لكم تحيات دولة رئيس مجلس وزراء العراق الأستاذ محمد الشاع السوداني المحترم، ومعالي وزير الداخلية الأستاذ عبد الأمير الشمري، وتمنياتهم لهذه القمة النجاح وتحقيق النتائج المثمرة وبلوغ أهدافها. وأختم بالفصل الإعراب عن فائق الشكر والامتنان على هذه الدعوة الكريمة. السيدات والسادة، قبل 100 عام صدر القانون الأساسي للمملكة العراقية الهاشمية في حينها، ولم يتطرق هذا القانون إلى مبدأ منح الجنسية على أساس حق الدم المنحدر من الأم، وجاء النص مطلقا في القانون الجنسية العراقية وأحكامها يحددها القانون، وهذا ما دأبت عليه قوانين الجنسية المتعاقبة والتي جرت عليها التعديل رقم 42 و 43. وبقي الحال عبر الحقب التاريخية إلى عام 2005، وهو العام الذي ولد فيه الدستور الجديد لجمهورية العراق، وجاء بمبدأ حديث وعصري ومتقدم وذو نظرة عميقة المدى، ألا وهو إعطاء الأم حق منح الجنسية لأبنائها وفقا للمادة 18، والتي نصت على يعد عراقيا من ولد لأب عراقي أو لأم عراقية، مثل ما ذكره السيد المتحدث من أندونيسيا. وعلى أثره تم صدور قانون الجنسية العراقي رقم 26 لسنة 2006، وأوضح المشرع العراقي في المادة 3 منه يعتبر عراقيا من ولد لأب أو أم عراقية. ويعد هذا القانون من القوانين المتقدمة في المنطقة، والذي أعطى المرأة في إشارة صريحة ومنصفة كافة حقوقها، ومنها مدار بحث هذه القمة منح الجنسية للأبناء والمساواة. وقد أحاط بجميع الجوانب التي تخص المرأة، ليس فقط حق المنح الجنسية، وإنما أعطى لها حق الازدواجية في حمل الجنسية والاحتفاظ بالجنسية العراقية إذا تزوجت بأجنبي، واسترداد الجنسية إذا كانت قد تخلت عنها مسبقا. وأصبحت المرأة بدرجة واحدة مع الرجل في نقل الجنسية للأبناء، سواء كانت جنسيتها أصلية أم مكتسبة، أي أن الزوجة الأجنبية إذا اكتسبت الجنسية العراقية وتزوجت بعد أن تحقق لها شرط اكتساب الجنسية، فأولادها يمنحون الجنسية العراقية، ولها الحق في منح أبنائها الجنسية العراقية وإن كان الزوج أجنبي. وقد أولت وزارة الداخلية العراقية اهتماما كبيرا وبإشراف معالي وزير الداخلية بمعالجة كافة القضايا التي تواجه المرأة، وخاصة في مجال منح الجنسية، وتشكيل لإجراء لجان قانونية لإجراء تعديلات على بعض من المواد القانونية. وتعاملت الوزارة بكل شفافية مع هذا المبدأ ذات البعد الإنساني الكبير وإعطاء المرأة دورا بارزا ومتميزا ومكانة ذات قدر عالي مع احترامنا لكل نساء العالم. وجرى خلال الأعوام الماضية أقدام الوزارة بالتنسيق مع المفوضية السامية للأمم المتحدة لشؤون اللاجئين لتصحيح الوضع القانوني للنازحين ومنحهم الوثائق الثبوتية بشكل ميداني عبر إرسال فريق عمل متخصص. وشهدت الآلية منح الكثير أي الجنسية العراقية على أساس جنسية الأم، لأن الكثير من آبائهم أما توفوا أو انتقلوا إلى مكان آخر، فكانت عندنا عملية معقدة، لكن الوزارة وضعت برنامج بسطت هاي الإجراءات ومنحت الجنسية على أساس الأم وفق سياق قانوني ينم عن تخطي كل التعقيدات التي تعتري عملية منح الوثائق. وسيتم العمل على تطوير تلك الآلية ووفقا لما معمول به في دوائر الجنسية بعموم العراق بالغد القريب بإذن الله. الوزارة عازمة إن شاء الله في الغد القريب إلى منح الاي دي كارد الى جميع المواطنين بغض النظر عن الجنسيه، اي اذا كان الوالد متوفي او اذا كان الوالد مفقود، فلدينا كل المعلومات مثبته في سجلات البيانات ونمنح الجنسيه الى الابناء. فضلا عن عمل الحكومه الى تذليل العقبات التي من شانها عرقلت الامور المتعلقه بحقوق المراه استنادا للقوانين والمواثيق والمعاهدات الدوليه وبالأخص ذات الطابع المتعلق بالجنسية. ومن المؤشرات الإيجابية بهذا الصدد فإن المشرع العراقي عندما أعطى للأم الحق في منح الجنسية فإنه عالج وبشكل قانوني حالات انعدام الجنسية رغم كل الظروف والتحديات اللي يواجهها العراق، وخاصة في الفترة التي تلت الحرب بالقضاء على تنظيمات داعش الإرهابية. السيدات والسادة الأفاضل، أن وزارة الداخلية العراقية حريصة كل الحرص على تسهيل مهام المرأة العراقية في ممارسة حقوقها أينما كانت، وحريصة أيضا على تنمية وتعزيز آفاق التعاون الإنساني إلى الحد الذي يوفر للمرأة العراقية مكانتها السامية وممارسة دورها في المجتمع. وختاما نتمنى لهذه القمة النجاح في مسعاها، وأن جمهورية العراق جادة ومتعاونة في جميع القضايا المتعلقة بالمرأة والجنسية، ومتمنين بذات الوقت التوفيق للجميع ولأعمال هذه القمة العالمية، والذي نرجو أن تصبو توصياتها في خدمة جميع الشعوب. ونتأمل إن شاء الله القوانين الأخرى تحذي حذو القانون المغربي والقانون العراقي والجزائري والتونسي فيما يخص الدول العربية وكذلك دول المنطقة، وأيضا تحل مشكلة السيدة حبيبة بعد أن سمعناها والأخت من ماليزيا كان في ألم شديد من سمعنا منح الجنسية وصعوبة والتقيد بقوانين الجنسية المعقدة. لكن الدول العربية إن شاء الله حاليا تبدأ أو إن شاء الله في مشوارها القريب راح تأخذ بهذا المبدأ مثل ما أخذ العراق والمغرب وبقية الدول وأيضا مصر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you very much indeed for those remarks, Major General. We really appreciate them, and we can see the importance of Iraq's leadership in this area within the region. So thank you very much indeed. And can I now invite Ms. Marianne Namakin, who is the Secretary of the Ministry of Women, Youth and Social Affairs, who's going to speak about her own country, Kiribati, and their efforts to address gender discrimination in their legislation. Thank you very much. Please welcome.
Thank you, Madam Facilitator. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I bring to you all warm greetings from the islands of Kiribati in the Pacific region. I am very honored to be here delivering this statement on behalf of the government of Kiribati to highlight some of the national efforts and initiatives on gender and women development in alignment with the theme of achieving gender equality in nationality laws. Madam Facilitator, as a large Pacific Ocean state with a culturally entrenched patriarchal system still in place. Achieving gender equality, especially in areas closely connected with culture and tradition, is very challenging indeed. Although remarkable strides have been made in the areas of education and employment, as evidenced by the high number of women occupying more than half of the top administrative and professional positions in government, apart from parliamentary positions. High school and university graduation rates continue to favor female students. Madam Facilitator, when Kiribati ratified CEDAW in 2004 and followed by surveys on issues concerning women, the government launched a program aimed at not only identifying areas of discrimination, but also formulating strategies and approaches and legislations to eliminate all forms of discrimination against its people, in particular women, children, those with gender diverse, and people with disabilities at all spheres of society. The government, in its Kiribati vision, a 20-year long-term development plan, 2016 to 2036, also included gender equality as one of its priority areas. Gender is also included in the Kiribati Development Plan 2020 to 2023. And in the Ministry of Women, Youth, Sport and Social Affairs Strategic Plan for year 2019 to 2022. At the ministry level, a gender equality and women development policy 2019 to 2022, which was developed in alignment with the short, medium, and long-term development plans of government, and with clear emphasis and guidance from regional, international, and global frameworks, treaties, and conventions such as CEDAW, including SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, as well as our national legal frameworks. At the national level, strengthening the governance of a gender-focused and women development initiative is key to government. A lot of work has been done around legislative reviews and passing of laws to capture the needs and interests of the vulnerable groups. The legal frameworks were also designed to protect and improve their well-being and promote equal rights in society. So to highlight a few of the relevant laws include the Family Peace Act 2014, which is now currently reviewed for improvement, the Education Act 2013, and supported by an inclusive education policy, the Employment and Industrial Relations Act, the Penal Code, and the Disaster Risk Management and Climate Change Act 2019 that also mainstreams gender issues by supporting women access to sexual and reproductive health care, women's safety during disaster and emergencies, including violence. These are just a few from the list that have been improved, but there are still more that needs improvement to ensure they are gender focused and balanced. Madam Facilitator, despite our progress in this area, achieving gender equality needs a long-term commitment, collaboration, and partnership to address the root cause of gender equality in our country. Mainstreaming gender at all levels, especially in remote islands, is challenging because of the sensitivity and cultural linkages attached to it, making it difficult to change people's behavior and mindset. In addition, drought and saltwater intrusion are imminent threats and challenges beside COVID-19 pandemic and other health-related crises affecting the livelihood of the people, especially women and girls. Madam Facilitator, Kiribati government acknowledges the fact that these gender gaps are caused by social, cultural, and environmental challenges and barriers. And obviously, these challenges affect the achievement of gender equality in society and in nationality laws as well. However, the government continues to work on improving its systems and processes to address these key challenges. Furthermore, the government recognizes the importance of focusing and educating children at a young age on gender, especially on equal rights, beside the older people, as an early influencing approach to address behavioral and mindset issues. The approach is envisaged to have a great impact and will change the community and society over time, but it requires a lot of work, time, and resources. This is one area that Kiribati would further develop and progress in collaboration with interested partners. Madam Facilitator, Kiribati acknowledges the commitment, dedication, and efforts of everyone involved in this space. So on this note, I would like to encourage leaders in government, non-government organizations, faith-based organizations, private sectors, civil societies, development partners to maintain and strengthen their support, cooperation, and partnership as one family in this quest for world of peace and equality. Madam Facilitator, to conclude, I would like to convey words of appreciation and acknowledgement to the organizers, fellow speakers, regional and international development partners and donors for their commitment, strong dedication, and partnership in progressing and advancing efforts in this space, mainly to address gender inequalities and discrimination for the betterment of our future, a future that is safe and peaceful. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary Namakan, and it's a great privilege for us to hear from a Pacific Island country, Kiribati, where you do have very specific problems, or challenges, I should say, with many islands, remote areas, difficult to reach, and you have to bring this nation together over these reform efforts. So thank you for that description of what you're doing and your efforts to achieve these equality outcomes. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and you come from a very long way, I know. Thank you very much indeed. Well, now it's time for you to speak a little more and to ask questions or make some comments. But I think we first have an intervention that we'll be receiving from Reem Al-Salem, who is the Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women and Girls. There she is. Please do join us. We're very much looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much, Madam Trick. It's really a wonderful opportunity for me to be with you here today. And I would like first to congratulate you and the other organizers on the convening of the summit on gender equality and nationality laws and casting a spotlight on this very important issue. I also want to thank the mothers for their powerful testimonies that precisely show how these gender discriminatory laws vibrate through the lives of women and their families. And also how it shows that at the core of all this, it's really a human rights issue. As we heard, the consequences of such gender discriminatory laws are very serious for women, including by resulting in situations of statelessness for themselves or their children. They may lead to further discrimination and exclusion in law and in practice, as well as result in a myriad of human rights violation. In fact, I would argue, like others have done as well, that the consequences of discriminatory nationality laws based on gender are so far-reaching, so all-encompassing, so damaging for women and their families that they amount often to continuous structural forms of violence also against women and girls. And as the representative of Morocco said, it also constitutes, in many cases, institutional situation of violence. Of course, violence here being understood as the worst form of discrimination against women and girls. And I believe that all too often, the lifelong psychological toll that the suffering of stateless women and women that do not have equal access to nationality laws undergo, either for their own situation or for seeing their children deprived of the most basic of rights, is profoundly underestimated. And the testimonies made this morning, particularly by Habiba, I think brought that very much home. Now, there's no doubt that it's not only the cause of this deeply troubling reality is gendered, but also the consequences are very gendered. So even in situations where stripping women and girls of their nationality as a form of punishment, say, for example, in terrorism-related charges, we see that these measures affect them differently from similar actions concerning men and boys. So it is clear to me that we still haven't sufficiently unpacked nor come to grips with the gendered aspect of these experiences. And frankly, disaggregated data doesn't help us very much, and we still have to pay more attention to it. So in view of these dimensions, perhaps it's also a good moment to say that I'm currently exploring the complex nexus between nationality laws, statelessness, and violence against women and girls in my upcoming thematic report to the General Assembly that I will be presenting in October 2023. And I also intend to use the opportunity of this report to take stock of good practices, many of which we have heard today, when it comes to legislative reform, policies, and initiatives to address these gender discriminatory nationality laws. I also wanted just to add that more broadly, that the special procedures of the Human Rights Council do engage on these issues. We have, for example, engaged on the Court of Appeal decision in Malaysia's gender unequal nationality law decision. And to conclude, I just wanted to also join others who have said this much more eloquently before me, that no effort must be spared to make it happen, that we have to really remove gender discriminatory laws to ensure the safety, dignity of everyone in society, including half of society, it's women and girls. And as we heard from state representatives who've shared their experiences, when there is a will, there is a way. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And we're very honored to have you with us as the UN Special Rapporteur in this issue. You understand it very well indeed. And of course, a great advocate for the point that when women do not have a nationality, they are especially vulnerable. And that makes them vulnerable to abuse, sexual abuse, trafficking, but also, of course, the violence that's so critical to your mandate. So thank you very much. I understand then we have a representative from Madagascar who'd like to make a particular point on development, which is integral really to the interventions a number of people have made. Thank you very much.
Oui, alors je vais parler en français, mesdames et messieurs, si vous voulez bien prendre votre équipement, parce que j'ai des messages aussi pour la salle. Alors, je peux commencer. Honorables auditoires, mesdames et messieurs, c'est vraiment une grande opportunité pour moi de parler avec vous aujourd'hui. Alors, juste pour faire un peu l'historique, en 2017, Madagascar a réformé son code de la nationalité pour donner à la femme malgache, au même titre que les hommes, la capacité de transmettre automatiquement sa nationalité à ses enfants. Moins d'un an après, c'est-à-dire vers novembre 2018, 2700 personnes métisses ou apatrides ont acquis la nationalité rien qu'au niveau de 4 tribunaux. C'est les chiffres que je peux partager. Une autre proposition est maintenant, au moment même où nous parlons, est en cours pour éliminer les discriminations persistantes dans la loi en vigueur en ce moment sur la nationalité. Cette loi, grâce aux actions de plaidoyer et de soutien avec l'appui de certaines organisations ici dans le UNHCR, est portée par 13 députés. Cette proposition de loi vise notamment à donner à la femme malgache, au même titre que l'homme, la capacité de transmettre sa nationalité à son conjoint étranger ou apatride, ainsi qu'à ses enfants adoptifs, parce qu'elle n'a pas encore cette capacité pour le moment. Elle vise également à donner à la femme la capacité de conserver sa nationalité en cas d'acquisition de la nationalité de son conjoint en conformité avec la nationale de ces derniers, parce que pour le moment, ce sont les hommes qui ont cette opportunité. Alors, cette loi également, au-delà des discriminations basées sur le genre, de l'égalité femmes-hommes, elle vise également à supprimer toutes les dispositions discriminantes envers les personnes handicapées en matière d'acquisition de la nationalité. Et elle vise également à consacrer le droit de tout enfant à Madagascar, sur le territoire, à acquérir une nationalité. Alors, en me limitant, en prenant en compte le temps limite dont je dispose, je tiens à vous dire que l'examen de cette proposition, je dis bien l'examen, c'est-à-dire son inscription dans l'agenda de l'Assemblée nationale va être décidé le 20 juin. Alors, en vous écoutant, en entendant les expériences inspirantes, toutes inspirantes et vos actions et les bonnes pratiques, j'aimerais attirer votre attention sur la force de cette salle. Et je salue vraiment l'initiatrice Catherine de cette initiative parce que je pense qu'il n'y a pas de hasard, il n'y a qu'un rendez-vous. Et cette fois-ci, la salle a rendez-vous avec Madagascar. Et j'aimerais, c'est une proposition que vos discours m'ont inspiré, qu'on fasse une déclaration collective pour pousser notre pays à adopter, à inscrire cette proposition de loi dans l'agenda de l'Assemblée nationale et à pousser les MPs, les parlementaires, le gouvernement et tout le monde, les décideurs du pays, à adopter cette loi parce que cette loi va corriger les injustices qu'on connaît, que vous avez tous et toutes parlé tout à l'heure. Alors, je vais vous montrer notre force collective. Essayons de faire une déclaration pour pousser notre pays à adopter cette loi. Je vous en prie, c'est ma requête. Je m'adresse à toute la salle, pas seulement à mes collègues de la coalition sur le Global for Equality Nationality Rights. Voilà ce que j'avais à dire. Merci à vous tous et à vous toutes. Voilà. Merci.
Well, thank you very much indeed for the call to action, and a very strong one. And of course, we can do this together with advocacy. We can do it. So thank you very much. And I'm glad at least you're at the build stage, but it's always so difficult to get it over the line and get it approved by Parliament. So I'm sure there are ways in which we can do this together. So we'll see what we can discuss. Is there any other contributions, interventions, comments, questions? Yes, please.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Nevada Joan Lee. I work with the Global Survivors Fund here in Geneva. And one of the things that we wanted to bring to the attention today is while this is really important for people who can't access national identity in even the best of circumstances, my organization works with women and survivors who are affected by conflict-related sexual violence. And in a lot of these areas, when a father is not known, or there's a child who's born to unmarried parents, even the avenues that are put in place are not able to be accessed by these survivors. Or if they are, the documentation processes are very difficult. The bars for proving that one is of that territory, whether it be like, for example, in Iraq, with the current laws that are put in place, it is really difficult for children who are born from rape from ISIS terrorists to access the same documentation and nationality rights as somebody who is born from a marriage that was under other circumstances. I just think it's important to bring to the attention that while these issues are super relevant for even children who are born from loving marriages, who have planned pregnancies and things like that, children who are born of war have heightened discrimination, heightened stigma, and still face these same problems as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And of course, that's very true, that children in conflict have, and their parents and their mothers have a great deal of difficulty with documentation, because if your documentation is run out, you haven't got the right documentation, or you never had the documentation. In the situation of conflict, it's extremely difficult to get that documentation. It seems a technical legal point, but it's actually fundamental, because you can't have access to any of the services or the things that go with status without them. So thank you for raising the issue of documentation. Any other comments? Yes, so.
شكرا جزيلا. تعقيبا على ما ذكرته الست بالنسبة للناجيات وتسجيل أبنائهم. طبعا بالعراق هو هذا تعرض إلى هذا الحادث بعد تنظيمات داعش الإرهابية، وصدر قانون الناجيات. وبالنسبة إلى تسجيل وعملنا حاليا، وأنا رئيس اللجنة المكلفة بمنح الوثائق للنازحين ومن ضمنها هذه المهمة. بالنسبة للأطفال المولودين من الأم العراقية والأب الأجنبي أو مجهول أو لا جنسية له، إذا كانت ماكو أي أوراق ثبوتية، فإحنا بدينا بالتنسيق مع المفوضية السامية للأمم المتحدة لشؤون اللاجئين بتنظيم أعمال قضائية بأنه يجب أن يسند زواج قضائي، ومن ثم نبدأ بعملية تسجيل الطفل على أساس مثل ما تعرفون أنتم عندنا أولويات، يعني حتى نصل إلى DNA، ومن ثم العقد يكون لديه شهود مثبتة وتبدأ عملية التسجيل، وسميناه التسجيل المجدد. وبزت عندنا حالات وبدينا نسجل ومؤشرة وموثقة لدى المفوضية. نعم هناك حالات لا ما تم التسجيل بها لأن نقص كان هناك بالوثائق، مثل ما يعرف الجميع اللي موجود في هذه القاعة، كل عملية قانونية يجب أن تقترن بوثائق. فلذلك احنا والمفوضية في هذا العمل مستمرين بمنح أولاد الناجيات الوثيقة العراقية. شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you very much, Major General. It's good to have you here, and of course to know that there is an approach by the government to ensure some processes to enable registration. It is a critical aspect. Very, very often we find in the UN Refugee Agency that when we try to explore the causes of statelessness, we often find that it comes down to these technical questions of documentation, fees that have to be paid, and so on. So I think the approach of the government is one that's very important in trying to resolve this issue. Are there any other? Yes, please.
Merci. Excusez-moi, je vais parler en français. Donc, moi, je voudrais tout simplement féliciter quand même cette campagne mondiale. Et je vais féliciter Catherine pour nous donner l'opportunité de parler de l'égalité en matière de nationalité, ce qui est important pour nous au niveau des pays des MENA. Mais je voudrais un peu attirer l'attention sur deux catégories de personnes qui sont victimes de cette discrimination en matière de nationalité. Les descendants d'esclaves. Les esclaves, ils sont apatrides. Ils n'ont pas de nationalité, ils n'ont pas d'appartenance. Et ça, c'est un problème que nous vivons, nous, au niveau de la Mauritanie. Je suis de la Mauritanie. Donc, nous avons aussi une autre catégorie d'enfants, c'est les enfants des rapatriés. Il y a eu de graves événements qui ont déchiré le tissu social mauritanien. Surtout, notre pays est un pays multiculturel où il y a plusieurs ethnies qui vivent ensemble. Et il y a eu des événements, il y a eu des déportations au Mali et au Sénégal. Ces enfants, ces femmes et enfants victimes de ces déportations, à ce jour, n'ont pas été rétablis dans leurs droits de citoyens mauritaniens avec un état civil et l'accès à la nationalité. Ils sont apatrides chez eux. Ils ont leur terre qu'ils possèdent depuis plus d'un siècle, alors qu'ils sont apatrides aujourd'hui à leur retour en Mauritanie. Donc, c'est deux catégories de personnes sont victimes de l'apatride en Mauritanie. Il y a aussi une autre catégorie il y a eu un peu d'évolution par rapport à leur inscription, c'est les populations déplacées, les demandeurs d'asile. Donc, il y a des enfants qui accompagnent et il y a des enfants non accompagnés qui atterrissent en Mauritanie parce que nous sommes un pays très d'union entre l'Afrique, l'Europe et le Moyen-Orient. Donc, cette catégorie d'enfants en général qui sont non accompagnés aussi sont victimes de l'apatride. Au niveau des évolutions de la nationalité, nous avons tout enfant né sur le sol mauritanien d'un père ou d'une mère mauritanienne à la nationalité, immédiatement la nationalité. Mais le problème, c'est que ces enfants ne sont pas dans cette catégorie de cibles par rapport au gouvernement mauritanien. Donc, je voudrais que cette question aussi soit prise en compte au niveau de la Mauritanie. Une question de plaidoyer pour pouvoir poser ce problème et l'intégrer dans le domaine de la modification de la loi sur la nationalité, qui a eu des modifications, l'une en 2010 et l'autre en 2021. Mais cette catégorie d'enfants et de personnes ne sont pas prises en charge dans cette nouvelle révision. Merci.
Well, thank you very much for giving us the perspective, of course, of a country that has had some turmoil, but is also in an area where many people come through as displaced people, including unaccompanied minors. So the burdens on the host state in Mauritania to care for these people and to give them nationality if they're otherwise stateless, of course, becomes a heavy one. But thank you for raising it with us. Okay, any other comments or questions? Well, thank you all very much indeed. I think it's been really a very, both a moving summit, or it is a summit, because we've heard the personal experiences, but we've also heard the much more positive stories of what it is that can be achieved by governments, by civil society, and by advocates that we've heard so much, or from many of them today. So thank you, and I pass, if I may, to Yvonne, but I'd like to finish by saying something I have said before, and that is, why would UNHCR, as the world's refugee agency in the United Nations, take on such a big problem where the resolution to a very high degree depends on the sovereign decisions of the country of a sovereign nation? Why would we do that when we don't have the numbers, we don't have data, we don't really know the dimension of the problem? Why will we agree to have an I Belong campaign? And the answer is very clear to me, and that is because it can be done. We can bring an end to statelessness. It's doable, and it's been so encouraging to hear from government representatives here to tell us how we can do it and how they're doing it. So thank you all very much, and I'll pass back to Yvonne.
Thank you so much, Gillian Triggs, UNHCR Assistant High Commissioner for Protection. And thank you for all the interventions from the floor. We are drawing to a close, very sadly. This is such an interesting issue, and so much more could be said, and so much more discussion should be had. Unfortunately, we don't have all the time in the world, or enough time. So I want to move on to now introduce our next speaker. We've discussed and seen the real human impact of the discriminatory laws that still exist. And I want to introduce a young activist, Neha, who is formerly, whoa, big clap for Neha, where is she? Neha, who is formerly a statelessness activist and who is leading efforts to advance gender equality in nationality laws and to combat statelessness, not only in her home country of Nepal, we've heard a bit about Nepal, but at the regional and global levels. And it does feel appropriate to close this event hearing from a young person, the youth perspective, about the future world she and her peers are working tirelessly to achieve. So if we could welcome Neha Gurung to the podium. Neha, if you could please come up from wherever you are. I wasn't able to cite you before, so I didn't know where you were coming from. So please come up.
Thank you so much. I'm usually scared of the podiums because usually podiums are taller than me, but today I'm not because it's perfectly sized. Well, 6 years ago, I was a stateless person with no legal identity in my own country. In the past 9 years, I was denied my right to higher education. I fought my case in the Supreme Court. I engaged in a nationwide advocacy campaign to end gender discriminatory nationality laws. I helped to create a network of stateless people. I completed my law school and established myself as a human rights lawyer in past 9 years. Namaste and bonjour, everyone. My name is Neha Gurung, and I come from a small country called Nepal, which, like Switzerland, has amazing, magnificent Himalayas. But Nepal is one of the 24 countries in the world which has gender discriminatory nationality laws. It disallows women and mothers, especially, to confer her citizenship certificate, her legal identity onto her children in an equal basis as men. And that is why my single mother was also not allowed to pass on her citizenship onto me, even though I was already 21 years old. It indeed feels surreal that today I'm standing here in front of all the influential dignitaries who hold the power to influence change, and that I'm not only speaking for myself or fighting for myself, but also representing the voices of all those mothers and children who are still fighting their battle to acquire equal nationality rights for themselves. I extend my heartfelt gratitude towards, on behalf of all those mothers and children and fathers, to the Global Campaign for Equal Nationality Rights, to UNHCR, UN Women, UNICEF, for your tireless effort in combating gender discrimination in nationality laws, and also for this amazing panel discussions and different sessions that we just had. It is indeed a platform to steer change. I really feel privileged, and I really feel privileged to be standing in front of all you individuals, your excellencies, ministers, and dignitaries. Thank you so much for all your efforts and your unwavering commitments towards this crucial cause. As we sit in this room, I'm sure we've heard a lot from everyone. I'm sure we have not forgotten the harsh realities that is faced by people elsewhere. Families affected by citizenship, by gender discriminatory nationality laws, which in many cases leads to statelessness, are trapped in dark abbeys. Young boys stare into the void, their eyes filled with tears. Young girls await their price to be fixed for marriages, sacrificing their goals, aspirations, and dreams for a chance at citizenship and belongingness. Stateless fathers hide from persecution all the time, worrying about their children. In the same darkness, mothers silently weep while soothing their children to sleep despite the turmoils within. Students close their book, uncertain of their future. In the case of my family, we stood victorious, thanks to my brave and fierce mother who really fought for us, and so many organizations and individual and activists who were there to support us. But the scar remains. It remains. My mother, for example, she could not return back to her career, her beloved career, after all the fights. Speaking of my mother, she puts it rightly when she says that when same citizenship card is given to both men and women, it is of same color, same type, same set of information, same size. Then why is the right emerging from the such same document different for different genders? Why is it different? Why is it that men are allowed to use the same citizenship card to confer his citizenship, his legal identity to his children and even to his foreign spouse, but women aren't? Why is it that women have to prove their affiliation and loyalty to their male counterparts to use the citizenship card, whereas male's citizenship or father's citizenship card is sufficient in itself. Why? If so, should men be given a pink and a women be green citizenship card? If not, doesn't it make a perfect sense that all the citizens are given equal rights irrespective of the gender? So division is not a concept in mathematics. It's a harsh reality is lived by women. It is a harsh reality that is lived by my mother, my grandmother, my sister, and myself. Gender discrimination is indeed fragments our society and our world. And this colossal shame of our species demands immediate action. Today, we gather here from different walks of life, representing various organizations who has done amazing works, organizations like Family Frontier, FWLD, Forum for Women Law and Development, Omani Association for Human Rights, and so many organizations, affected people, advocates. All of us are here from different walks of life representing various organizations. Standing together, our strength will become stronger. And I am faithful that our cries will be heard sooner than later. But actually, I'm both an optimist and a realist. I'm an optimist because I believe that change is possible. It is possible. And I think that one day, mothers will not have to prove their loyalty towards their male counterparts just to earn their equal citizenship rights. I believe that gender discrimination will no more be a cause for statelessness one day. And I'm a realist because listening to all the panel discussions and everyone today, and also based on the pledges and commitments that we've heard, not only from UN organizations, but also from countries and country representatives like Eswatini, Liberia, USA, Australia, Indonesia, Morocco, Iraq, and Kiribati. I'm confident that these drivers of change have vision. They have vision. They know what they are doing. They know the destination. And I'm confident that they understand that everyone has the right to belong. So I place my hope. I place my hope, the hope of my mother, the hope of all the mothers and daughters, the hope of all the activists and advocates here. I place these hopes before these governments and states. Let us all work together to realize women's status as equal citizen and build a future where gender equality is embraced in our laws and society. This is a major step towards ending statelessness, and a critical one that ensures that families of every citizen has a right to belong. Families of every citizen has a right to belong, and that children have the right to their mother's legal identity. Let us put it as simple as this, that children have the right to their mother's legal identity. So I believe that it is high time that states and governments put themselves in the shoes of those affected and realize their human rights obligations to ensure inclusive and equal citizenship laws. And like Catherine G. said earlier, it is in fact a win-win situation for states, for societies, and for individuals. So I wish that this collective strength emanating from this room today, it reaches the hearts of all those awaiting rescue from the chains of injustice. And it also reaches those responsible for change. Let children be liberated from this curse. And may we be able to say that one day all the states have eradicated gender discrimination from their laws, from the face of the earth for once and for all. And I would like to leave my concluding remarks with a note that unity holds an infinite power. Unity holds an infinite power, and nothing can be as powerful as the unison voice of the affected people and also the people with learned experiences. Nothing can be powerful than the unison voice of those with lived experience and learned experience and the hunger for equality, justice, and legal identity. Thank you so much.
Neha, thank you so much. What inspirational words to end today's important summit with. Thank you so much, Neha. I want to thank our in-person audience. That's all of you. Smile for yourselves. Our online audience, several hundred who have been following today's event and proceedings online. We invite you to keep this conversation going. This is the end of the summit, but it's not the end of the conversation. And for those of you who are active on social media, please use the hashtag Equal Citizenship. Our co-sponsors invite you all to raise your voices, use your influence, and join efforts at national, regional, and global levels to achieve a world with gender equal nationality rights for all. I'll say that again, gender equal nationality rights for all. We want to say thank you to the Global Campaign for Equal Nationality Rights, UNHCR, UNICEF, and UN Women who have been co-sponsors of today's summit. You are now all warmly invited to join a reception immediately outside of this room that will go on until 6:30. I want to thank everybody who has attended in person and online and remind you not to forget your mug. We don't want to see any mugs left behind, so that you're reminded every day that the cause is still ongoing and change is still required in so many places. A round of applause for yourselves, I guess. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure hosting and moderating this event. It's been fantastic. Thank you for the opportunity.
very action they've been easy campaign that they have been doing in order to gain popularism by spreading xenophobia and patriarchy for this. So it's much easier, you know, like into some certain XYZ billion people are stateless and they are not, they're not doing taxes to the country. But then it's not like this, the politicians, we need them targets. And this has to go. This has to go. The narration has to go. The narratives has to be established as a human rights person. And for this, we encourage making every sad that we all happen in the next year. And I'm also worried what's going to happen with that. Whatever it is, we need to be verified. We have to bring this voice, bring this narration out to the public, to this open, establish this as a human rights, not political. I think this will bring a lot of changes, and it needs to be very, very society focused campaigns that we will have to focus on this point. Advocacy is there, which is very, very, I appreciate a lot. But there are two things that vital things I personally feel like we lack today. Number one, the people who are at risk, stateless people, they are still not in center because every